There's so many of them. How can all of them be witches?
David's uncle tells him he's not worried. God will be his bodyguard. But his face tells a different story.
You've been listening to Assignment from the BBC World Service. The presenter was Jerry Mwangi. The producers were Nicola Milne and me, Louise Hidalgo. We asked the Kenyan police for their comment on the issues raised in the programme. They didn't respond.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC.
Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fondal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Good morning as well to the folks who are watching on CBC Television and streaming on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Brad Lillies is our streaming producer. First, let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and Heather Wells joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, much of Manitoba is sweating it out under a heat wave again today. Environment Canada has heat warnings covering almost the entire province. In Winnipeg, you can cool down at city-run leisure centres, libraries, pools, spray pads, and some community centres. The city has also set up 8 hydration stations in the core North End and West End. Meanwhile, groups like Community 204 are handing out water to people who are unhoused. So we'll hear more about that. And the decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky has confessed to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but argues he should be found not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. We'll be hearing about that throughout the day. You can find more news on our website as always, and I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
It's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Still to come on the program, as annoying as mosquitoes may seem, they might not actually be that bad. From being pollinators to keeping the ecosystem in check. After our 7:30 news, we'll learn more about the good things mosquitoes do when they're not bothering humans, which I know for some people is not always a thing. We'll also hear more about toxic metals like lead and arsenic being found in 14 different popular tampon brands in the U.S. Those findings were part of a first-of-its-kind study, a conversation on what that means for people who menstruate. That's coming up in our first hour of the program here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. As you proceed with your day today, because of those heat warnings, you will want to be careful. Early signs of heat illness include feeling unwell, fatigue, thirst, headache. We're told that feeling thirsty is not a good indicator of dehydration. Essentially, it's too late. We'll let you know how to manage the hot weather and tell you what to expect here on the program. Stay tuned. World Report is standing by.
On Q with Tom Power.
Wanda Koop is one of Canada's most accomplished and influential contemporary painters. Wanda says she draws inspiration from the world she observes around her. She'll be here to talk about her latest exhibition and how she says she paints things before she sees them.
We're in the visual world and we feel things deeply.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Many Indigenous leaders say they are frustrated with the Trudeau government, and today Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will lean into that. He is appearing at the Assembly of First Nations in person for the first time. And as Olivia Stefanovich reports, some of the chiefs might be feeling like it's time for a change in government.
Quit being on your phone or talking and listen to us. That's what you're here for.
Assembly of First Nations leaders aren't shy about voicing their frustrations with the Trudeau government.
You're ignoring my emails and my letters.
And if you have balls enough, come to my territory.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Andanda Sangari got an earful yesterday.
Look, when there's an election, I think it'll be a clear decision for Canadians to make, including First Nations.
Forcing him to defend his government's work on reconciliation.
And I would be proud to put up our record against Pierre Poilievre's any single day.
I've listened to First Nations.
Pierre Poilievre will try to capitalize on that frustration this morning when he makes his first in-person appearance before the AFN as Conservative leader.
I hope to hear that he fully accepts and wants to work with First Nations.
Sartlip Band Chief Don Tom says he'll be listening to Poilievre's every word.
Our experience in the past hasn't been so great working with Conservative government, so we're a little bit worried.
Tom says Poilievre must prove he's willing to listen and take the issues of each First Nation seriously if he wants to become the next Prime Minister. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Montreal.
A judge will reveal this morning if Jeremy Skibitsky will go to prison or a psychiatric hospital. The Winnipeg man has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but his lawyer argued he is not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Now the judge must decide whether he was experiencing a psychotic episode or driven by a perverse sexual interest. Karen Pauls has more and a warning: some of the details in the story are disturbing.
In a police interview, Jeremy Skibitsky confessed to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman who's been given the name Buffalo Woman.
I killed 4 people. Okay.
During the trial, defense witnesses testified Skibitsky was suffering from schizophrenia at the time of the killings. Anna Seghetti is a Toronto lawyer who represents people who have been found not criminally responsible.
It would be unfair to incarcerate someone who was ill at the time of their offending, regardless of how brutal or how violent their act was. What they need is treatment and assistance to reduce their risk.
Crown experts testified Skibitsky is a homicidal necrophiliac, a rare condition where people are aroused by having sex with someone they've killed. Brandon Trask is a former Crown prosecutor who now teaches law at the University of Manitoba.
Typically, if we see cases where the defense is making this sort of an argument, it's usually in relation to sort of a single incident or multiple incidents, but over a short period of time. Here, obviously, you've got multiple victims, and those offenses spread out over a relatively elongated period of time. That's very unusual.
The garbage dump is not a burial site for our women and girls.
The killing sparked demands to search a landfill for the remains of 2 of the victims. That search is now set to begin in the fall. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
British police are expected to give an update this morning on a triple killing. 3 women were found dead in their suburban London home on Tuesday. Police say they were killed with a crossbow. The victims are the wife and 2 daughters of BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt. The suspect was found injured in a cemetery yesterday. The UK government says it is considering tightening the laws on owning crossbows. We're watching the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington for an important announcement from Canada. It appears the federal government is ready to commit to spending 2% of its GDP on defense. Here's what Defense Minister Bill Blair told a NATO panel yesterday.
I'm hoping over the next few days that we'll be able to articulate for our colleagues a credible and verifiable path for Canada and the investments we have to make.
A senior Canadian official told CBC News the federal government could unveil a timeline to hit NATO's spending target today, likely at the very end of the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there yesterday.
We're going to continue to be there step by step, not just supporting you directly, but making sure everyone across the NATO alliance remains as steadfast as we are in support for you and for Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Canada pledged another $500 million in military assistance to Ukraine, and the 2 leaders also discussed the expansion of training missions for Ukrainian pilots. An evacuation order has been issued for a community in central British Columbia. Residents in the northeast region of Wells are ordered to leave immediately. The Cornish Mountain wildfire was discovered yesterday. Officials say it is a threat to safety. The fire is currently burning 70 hectares of land. It has been nearly a year since a wildfire forced residents of Yellowknife out of their homes. The city is still working on finalizing its emergency plans for this season, but for organizations that support Yellowknife's vulnerable population, that plan cannot come soon enough. Natalie Pressman reports.
Better communications could have helped the city of Yellowknife during last summer's wildfire evacuation. It's one of the observations in a new report out this week that makes 26 recommendations on coordination, communication, and supporting residents. Rebecca Alty is Yellowknife's mayor. She says they've been implementing some of them, like engaging the public and training for staff, but she says updating the city's emergency plans won't be finished until later this summer.
Unfortunately, do I wish it could have been done in November? For sure, but we want to make sure that they're done well, they're done right.
The Yellowknife Salvation Army has already booked accommodations for its clients in case the city has to evacuate. Tony Burchett is the executive director. He says his organization can't wait for the city's updates.
Otherwise, it'll be last year all over again.
He says planning is especially important for vulnerable population.
When we look at them and say, you have to be out of here by tomorrow, the mental health issues kick in.
Tammy Roberts is the executive director of Home Base. That's supported living for youth in Yellowknife. She says Home Base has its own emergency plans too.
You can't just spring something on somebody who has a disability.
Roberts and Burchett say they have seen improvements from the city, but that they have to take care of their own. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
China is cementing its position as a leader in renewable energy development. That is the conclusion of the latest report by the Global Energy Monitor. The NGO says when it comes to wind and solar energy, China is not only a worldwide leader, it also has twice as much capacity with projects under construction than the rest of the world combined. Brazil, Australia, and the United States are also top producers of renewable energy. Canada, not in the top 10. In PEI, farm country and scanning of potato plants for viruses is tedious work, and it's getting harder to find people who want to do the job. As Nancy Russell tells us, AI technology may have the answer in a robot.
It looks like a dune buggy mounted on big tires with long black wings, but the AgriScout robot has an important job in the potato field, using AI to identify diseases. It's funded by the PEI Potato Board, which came to the University of Prince Edward Island searching for a more high-tech way of looking for potato virus Y. Ryan Barrett is with the Potato Board.
Detecting PVY, it's one of the few things we do in potatoes that's very manual. It involves walking up and down fields, trying to look for disease plants.
The robot has a camera mounted over every row, and it's doing 5 rows at a time, taking photos of the plants.
The artificial intelligence is processing those images and hopefully being able to pick out plants that it thinks are infected.
They are taking the robot across PEI this summer to give the AI program more images to analyze and learn from. Potato researchers check the plants that have been identified by the robot to see how well it is doing at finding the potato virus. Master's student Charanpreet Singh helped to develop the robot.
Yeah, it's really hard for even the human to tell the difference between the healthy and infected plants, right? So to train the AI models to detect those symptoms are really challenging.
UPEI researchers hope to have farmers using the robots next summer, with the goal of having the AgriScout robot ready to sell commercially in 3 to 5 years. Nancy Russell, CBC News, North Wilshire, PEI.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Fondal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Up to Speed on CBC Radio 1. And good morning as well to the folks watching on CBC Television and your CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Brad Lillies is our streaming producer. In this hour of the program, Ticketmaster is sounding the alarm on a huge security breach that could have put customers' personal and financial data at risk. We'll hear more from technology analyst Carmi Levy. Also, it's that time of year when no one feels like cooking. So maybe it's time to turn that barbecue on. A chef joins us to discuss grilling beyond the basics this summer. First, though, toxic metals like lead and arsenic were in 14 different popular tampon brands in the U.S. Findings part of a first-of-its-kind study. We'll hear more from the study author and what it means for people who menstruate. That's coming up here on the program. Stay tuned. First, though, at 11 minutes after 6 o'clock, we head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Heather Wells joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, as you heard on World Report, the decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky confessed to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but argued he should be found not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. We'll hear some viewpoints on that and what might unfold today in that courtroom. As well, returning some unclaimed family history to Winnipeggers. An employee at Empire Drugs found a box in the basement of that North End pharmacy, old-fashioned film photos developed 60 years ago and never claimed. We'll hear what happens in our next local news at 6:30.
Hey, Heather, what time is it again?
It's coming up on 12 minutes after 6.
So, and what happens when it's this time of morning? It's information radio.
Are you okay? The heat has you.
Yeah, the heat has. It's not up to speed. This is information radio. So, good morning. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Adiemi, it's going to get only hotter, isn't it?
Yes, my dear friend. It's going to get hotter. It's 21 degrees and clear out there. Faith, look at this. I got, 1 and 2. And then I got 3. Now, the first one says special air quality statement. The second one says heat warning, and the third one says heat warning. Now, the whole province is under heat warning as of now, and of course, also we have that special air quality statement for Flin Flon all the way down to Prince Shea. But for Winnipeg right now, we're going to be seeing sunny skies. It's going to be a sunny start throughout the day, and some hazy conditions would come with that. It will become breezy sometime this morning. The winds will be picking up from the south, and then we will warm up to 32. But with the humidex, it's going to feel like 37 degrees. That's why it's calling for that heat warning for this part of the province. And tonight, the skies will be clear, still becoming partly cloudy overnight, and then a slim chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm. A real one that shower to come, so it can cool things down. And then we're going to dip down to 23. So from 37, we're going to cool down to 23, but it's still going to be a humid night. Right now in Winnipeg, we're going to start sunny. We're going to see some hazy conditions. It will be hot in Winnipeg today. Just giving you the heads up, and I'll tell you, hydrate and take advantage of those splash pads, the libraries and cooling centers, because it might be feeling uncomfortable outside.
All right. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Sabi Adiemi, our tech producer here today. Corey Funk. Good morning.
Good morning.
Studio director.
Yes. Keep an eye on that commute this morning, and it's actually pretty quiet overall still. Like I said, it's pretty vacation-y out there on the streets. But that hasn't stopped a few cars from stalling or the odd collision here and there. So if you do see something going on, give me a call. Let folks know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
Coming up to 15 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. A new study out of the University of Berkeley, California, is causing major concern for those who menstruate. The study found that several popular brands of tampons used by millions of people each month contain toxic metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium. Jenny A. Shearston is lead author of the first paper to measure metals in tampons. She's at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health. The CBC's Chloe Friesen spoke with her, and here's part of their conversation.
I'm curious about your reaction to the findings of this research. Was it a result you were expecting?
No, not at all. We were expecting to find some metals present in tampons because metals are everywhere in the environment, but we weren't expecting to find lead in 100% of the tampons we tested. So on average, we found 120 nanograms per gram of lead. And to put that in a little bit of context, that's about 25% of the lead that you'd find in an average cigarette in the U.S.
Are these levels concerning?
You know, it's too soon to say at this point. Right now, all we've done is show that there are these metals present in the tampons, but what we don't know is whether or not the metals can come out of the tampon and get into the body. So until we know that, we can't really speculate about any potential health effects, if any.
Now, I've heard some conversation just around this study already, and just the thought of lead and arsenic being found in tampons is concerning. But what are potential health concerns when it comes to the body absorbing these metals?
Well, lead has been shown to be associated with a number of different health impacts, but its primary target is the nervous system. But again, before we go too far down that road, I think it's really important for us to first understand if that lead can come out of the tampon and if it's getting into the body.
Right, that's still unknown.
Research has shown there's no safe level of exposure to lead, for example. So it's really important we study this.
Why do you think it's taken so long for someone to do this research?
I think part of the reason is that there's just been this historical taboo around talking about periods and about menstruation. And that doesn't just impact what we feel comfortable saying to each other. That also impacts science and the kinds of research questions we even think to ask. Tampons have been around since the 1930s, but we haven't studied this before.
Can I ask what got you into this area of study and what motivated you to look at metals in tampons?
Yeah, well, it's both personal and professional. I menstruate, I have to manage my period, and so do several other people on our research team. And we'd already done work thinking about metals and their health impacts, but realized there wasn't anything about metals in tampons, even though cotton, which is the main ingredient in a lot of tampons, is known to contain metals and other chemicals.
What sort of reaction have you got from even beyond the scientific community to these findings?
Definitely a lot of surprise, a lot of concern, and I think that's warranted. It's really important we continue asking these questions.
So what happens next with these findings, or where would you like to see this research go?
Yeah, well, right now we're actually working on trying to see if these metals will leach out of tampons, and I think that's a great next step. But I'd also love to see people talking more about making sure that their tampons and menstrual products are safe and that we know what's in them.
Now I know, just seeing some of these findings, hearing words like lead and arsenic paired with tampon, some people might think maybe I should stop using them. Is that a valid reaction?
I think it's a little too soon at this point to say whether or not you should or shouldn't use the tampon. So many things go into what people decide to use to manage their periods, whether that's cost, convenience, what they're able to use. So I think there's a lot of things to consider there.
Well, Jenny, thank you for joining us and breaking down some of these findings for us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Jenny A. Sherston is a postdoctoral scholar at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health and the lead author of a new study titled Tampons as a Source of Exposure to Metals. CBC reached out to Health Canada for comment, and a spokesperson sent a statement. In part, it reads, quote, menstrual tampons are regulated as medical devices in Canada. Manufacturers must comply with the requirements of the medical devices regulations. Health Canada monitors information related to the safety of medical devices authorized for sale in Canada. This study and its findings are being assessed. Health Canada will take action if warranted.
School is out. Time to sleep in, ride your bike. Summer camp. Remember that feeling? Fort White Alive wants to bring it back with The Great Escape, a one-night adult summer camp. Hike the trails, hop in a canoe, and play all kinds of games at CBC's tent. Plus, a dance party hosted by DJ K. Chetta and your choice of adult bevy. The Great Escape, July 25th at Fort White Alive. Proudly sponsored by CBC.
20 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. And it is summertime and it's going to be hot. How can you transform your recipes and make your barbecue experience a much better one? We'll have that conversation with a chef and cookbook author. Stay tuned for that. First, though, Cassidy Mann joining us with a tune. This one's called Disappointing the Internet.
Should I be at a party? Should I be more social? Should I feel guilty? My night is over. Is it pathetic to spend a Friday in my bedroom? Does it count as smiling if it doesn't show up on a screen? 'Cause I see other people on the World Wide Web, I lose Does it matter? Is it worth it? 'Cause when I see other people on the World Wide Web, I lose it. Oh, they're doing everything that I'm not. So I don't wanna open up a single application. If I'm lying in my bed, I'll just get caught up in expectations. I don't necessarily make them, but they still get to me nonetheless. I'm disappointed, the internet. Something's always blowing up, and I can barely get out of bed. I worry I won't measure up to all the thoughts I have inside my head. And I see other people on the World Wide Web. And I see other people on the World Wide Web. Oh, I might lose it. Yeah, I might lose it. Oh, I might.
Out of Winnipeg, that was Cassidy Mann and Disappointing the Internet. We're at 23 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1 under heat warnings for many parts of the province, so be prepared for those conditions today. Coming up to temperature high of 32 here in Winnipeg. Now, nothing beats a relaxing summer night if you can keep cool with a refreshing drink and a flavorful meal hot off the barbecue. But how do you transform your grilling experience beyond the typical fare? Raquel Fox is a chef, cookbook author, and recipe developer. She's joining us in Toronto. Hi, Raquel.
Hi.
Of course, we have the classics like burgers and hot dogs. Fruits and veggies, what are the ones that we can grill, would you say?
You know, right now, there is a whole plethora of wonderful in-season vegetables and fruits for our grills this summer. You know, my favorite go-to are the stone fruits, like peaches, plums, and apricots. And, you know, the charring of the grill on these fruits just caramelize them so well and brings out the smoky sweetness of these fruits that really complements our protein so well. We can make chutneys and compotes, jelly and jam as a side to our proteins and really take it next level.
And do you have to do anything different to prepare them, or do you kind of just cut them up and throw them on the grill?
You know, my favorite go-to, as I mentioned, are peaches. And all you really need to do, of course, you're going to rinse and dry your fruits. You're going to just cut it in half, remove the seed from it, and you're just simply going to add it to the grill grate at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to grill for about, I would say, about 1 to 3 minutes, just until the skin of the fruit chars. Start skin side down first. You want it to char to the point where it's almost about to burst and release its juices. And then you're going to flip it over on the flesh side, continue to char it but a minute or so. And then you will decide whether you want to use your favorite stuffing. I love using goat cheese and chive and perhaps even putting some prosciutto in it. Or, you know, you can even think about using one of your favorite Thanksgiving stuffing.
Yeah, whenever I think of barbecuing, I often envision my dad in the backyard cooking something, trying to add and make it sort of taste like a Filipino dish. Are there other barbecue dishes that have international flavors or spices when it comes to rubs and marinades that you suggest for folks when it comes to barbecuing?
Oh, well, you just happened to come to the right chef this morning, because I happen to have my very own barbecue line sold throughout Canada in major grocery stores, international section. And, you know, I make my grandmother's famous guava barbecue sauce. Now, guava is that tropical fruit. I know you know what guava is.
I do, yep.
for the viewers, listen, guava is the taste of a pear meets a strawberry and a banana. It's so aromatic and delicious. We add it to our barbecue sauces, and we also add fruits like mangoes to our barbecue sauces for those international flavors. But I'm telling you, my guava barbecue sauce is so delicious, you would want to brush your teeth in it. And I also have a maple habanero barbecue sauce, which is really my ode to Canada. So those fruity habanero with a mild spice is just going to balance that delicious Canadian maple. And I have an amazing barbecue rub that's sweet and smoky with earthy undertones. And guys, you can go to my website at islandgirlwithayufoods.ca for more recipe inspiration and also to purchase these sauces.
Apparently, you can also grill desserts. Is that a thing?
Oh, yes. Oh, it's a big thing. You know, you want to set yourself up for success when you have guests coming over for a barbecue. So I call it, in the culinary world, we say our action plan. So you just want to be organized if you're planning to prepare any appetizer, your main, and dessert on the grill. And you want to save a side of the grill, keep that side clean for your dessert, so you don't want to put it on the main side. Now, my favorite dessert to grill, believe it or not, is my grandmother's coconut custard pie. And yes, you can bake a pie on the grill by just having an already made pie crust in an aluminum pie plate. You rest that on the grill at 350 degrees, and you close the top of the grill. It becomes an oven. You're going to bake it for about 10 minutes, and then you lift the top and add that wonderful coconut custard pie filling. Close the top down again, and only 15 minutes you will have the most sensational, outstanding pie.
Raquel, I can't wait until the afternoon comes so I can try these things. I really appreciate you making time to talk today. Thank you, and happy barbecuing. Take good care.
Oh, thank you for having me. Happy barbecue summer.
Raquel Fox, chef and author of the cookbook Dining in Paradise. She is in Toronto this morning. We're at 29 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app, on CBC Television. Good morning, and hello as well to the folks watching on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa for the next week and a bit here. Thanks for joining us this morning. If you see issues on your commute this morning, call our commuter line, 2047-883093, 2047-883093. Our studio director, Corey Funk, is waiting for your phone call. There are a whole bunch of heat warnings, and in fact, you might be wondering how to beat the heat and how to deal with it. It can get pretty dangerous. We'll talk more about some of the things that you can do in our next half hour of the program. We'll also hear more about zero-interest loans that can offer temporary relief, but those promotional rates often come with fees and ballooning costs if not paid on time. We'll have all those details coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's already 21 and sunny in downtown Winnipeg. And as Faith mentioned, we do have a heat warning covering most of Manitoba, including Winnipeg. Our high today, 32. The humidity will make it feel closer to 37. The decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky has confessed to killing 4 women, indigenous women, in 2022, but argued he should be found not criminally responsible due to mental disorder. Lawyer Anita Zaghetti says that is an uphill battle to prove, in part because the killings happened over a 2-month period.
If there is an NCR verdict in this case, I think it'll be a very interesting one, a very unique one, a very atypical one. I would certainly be looking at the judge's reasons and judgment to see how those dots are connected.
Skibitsky pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Comtois, Mercedes Myron, Morgan Harris, and an unidentified woman given the name Buffalo Woman or Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. Much of Manitoba is sweating under that heat again today. Environment Canada with heat warnings covering almost the entire province. In Winnipeg, you can cool down at city-run leisure centres, libraries, pools, spray pads, and some community centres. The city's also set up 8 hydration stations in the core, the north end, and west end. Meanwhile, there are groups like Community 204 handing out water to people who are unhoused. The group's Alexis Tashnak says if people see anyone unhoused or vulnerable, they should make sure they're okay.
A lot of people just seem to think, you just keep walking by, they're just wanting money. But, sometimes it's just that simple hello to see how they're doing and their mental health and just asking them the questions like, hey, have you had any water today? No, you haven't? Hey, I've got some water in the back of my car. I'll be right back and I'll bring you some.
Tashnak says members of her group are looking out for signs of heat-related illness as they try to help people in need stay hydrated. Indigenous leaders are expressing a lot of frustration with the Liberal government at the Assembly of First Nations in Montreal.
Quit being on your phone or talking and listen to us. That's what you're here for.
You're ignoring my emails and my letters. And if you have balls enough, come to my territory.
Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will try to lean into some of that outrage today. He's about to make his first in-person address to the Assembly. In the past, Poilievre has only sent out a recorded video message to the chiefs, and they say if he wants to be Canada's next Prime Minister, Poilievre will have to prove he will take each First Nations issues seriously. Well, after weeks of criticism abroad and at home, it appears the federal government's ready to commit to spending 2% of its GDP on defense. Defense Minister Bill Blair told that to a NATO panel yesterday.
I'm hoping over the next few days that we'll be able to articulate for our colleagues a credible and verifiable path for Canada and the investments we have to make.
A senior Canadian official telling CBC News the federal government could unveil a timeline to hit NATO's spending target today, likely at the very end of the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there yesterday.
We're going to continue to be there step by step, not just supporting you directly, but making sure everyone across the NATO alliance remains as steadfast as we are in support for you and for Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Canada pledging another $500 million in military assistance to Ukraine. The two leaders also discussed the expansion of training missions for Ukrainian pilots, as well as possibly adding training on Canadian flight simulators. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A North End pharmacy employee is connecting some Winnipeggers with snapshots of their past.
E. Rudolph, 792 Stella Avenue, yes. June 7, 1967. So inside there's 2 photos.
Okay. Dwayne Hines handing over photographs he found in the basement of Empire Drugs. Old-fashioned film photos developed 60 years ago, never claimed. Hines used social media to find family members.
We've made some great connections already. Some relatives are coming to claim photos. We've had a story from Selkirk where a woman had a house fire, so she lost everything. And so now this one package of pictures is all she has, so she's coming to pick them up tomorrow.
Hines says he feels like an archaeologist finding lost treasures. There were 30 packages of unclaimed photos. Hines hopes through the names and addresses he can find all the families. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Adiemi is back now for more on the hot weather and how you deal with it. Good morning.
Good morning, Faith. I'll tell you, we are at 21 right now in the city. We're expecting sunny skies to take over. Then it's going to become hazy and breezy from the south. We're aiming for a high of 32, though it's going to feel hotter than that today. And I'll advise you, the most part of the province is under this heat warning. So take care as you start your day. If you are one of those that walk outside, do remember to take breaks and hydrate yourself and, of course, protect yourselves. And we should also remember our furry friends. Fill their bowls with water and also try to make some shades for them. I would just advise you to do that. Brandon is at 16, partly cloudy also. Today we'll see some sunny conditions with some haze to come with that, then becoming breezy from the southwest. We will be getting to a high of 33. 33, and it's going to feel warmer. We have a chance of showers and thunderstorm later to come with that. North in Thompson at the moment, currently 19 with local smoke. We will see a mix of sun and clouds as we get into the day. There is a chance of showers, a risk of thunderstorm. Highs will get to 27, but it will be feeling in the range of 35 with the humidity. And the evening brings more clouds and possible showers. Further north in Churchill, currently 10 degrees, sunny already. It's going to become a mix of sun and clouds later, and then we'll see highs of 17. For the evening period, you get clear skies into the night. Down in Dauphin, 24 and sunny at the moment. You'd get this mainly sunny conditions with you for most of the day. Then it's going to come with some hazy conditions. It will be breezy also. Your high forecast is for 33 degrees, so it's going to feel like 40 with the humidity. So you might want to also take care if you're working outdoors and try to protect yourself from exposures to direct sunlight. Tonight will be partly cloudy for you, and then there's a chance of showers and thunderstorm later in the evening. Gimli is currently sitting at 18 degrees and clear. For the Interlake region today, we'll see some sunny conditions coming with some haze and then becoming breezy. Highs aiming for 32, but it's going to feel in the range of 37 with the humidity. And then tonight you see some partly cloudy conditions with chance of showers and thunderstorm late. Steinbach sitting at 17, sunny and hazy day ahead, high of 32. And finally, Morris is currently at 18 degrees. It is clear. The Pembina Valley region will see sunny conditions with hazy conditions to come with that. Becoming breezy from the south, we'll see highs of 32, but it will feel hotter than that. You'll be in the range of 36, and partly cloudy tonight. There's a chance of showers and thunderstorm. Right now in Winnipeg, it's a warm day across the province. We're getting to a high of 32 in the city. It's going to be feeling closer to 40 with the humidity, and that heat warning is in effect for southern and the northern regions, and also part of the north is under that special air quality statement, so you need to take care as you go about your day today. And this will stay with us till most of into tomorrow and late tomorrow.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi there. By the way, the health risks are greater for older adults, infants, young folks, pregnant people, and people with mobility or disabilities or mobility issues. So if you have friends or family, today's a good day to check up on them as well throughout the day. Corey Funk is following the commute. Good morning.
Morning. I was trying to think of a commute advice for the heat, and if it was 1995, I would say don't leave your VHS tapes in the car because they will melt.
They will, and I've seen.
Yeah, and for the kids, VHS tapes they're kind of like what you would do before Netflix.
What is VHS again? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I remember going to the video store and they'd like have that like example of a melted VHS tape. Like, don't do this.
It's like remember to rewind, but also don't melt your VHS.
Yes,
tapes.
Exactly. So, though, other than that, it has been actually a very quiet commute overall out there. The Norwood Bridge under construction until September. So that, of course, is going to be causing some big backups. It's not closed, obviously, but there are a bunch of lanes closed. I think it's generally the right lanes lately that have been closed. So keep left, kind of hug the median if you can. But if you see something else going on out there, if you want to give me an update on anything else you're seeing, if you're walking, biking, driving, would love to hear from you. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Corey Funk is our studio director. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. Hello to the folks listening on the radio, online, and of course on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Good morning. And good morning as well to our CBC National Business Desk and Crystalie Ramlakan joining us. Hello.
Hi, good morning, Faith.
There's a store known for a lot of its deals. It's increasing one of its prices. What are we talking about here?
Yes, so this is Costco. It's hiking its annual membership for the first time in 7 years here in Canada and the US, and that's going to affect September 1st. So it's going up by $5 to $65 for these Gold Star and Business members, and then from $120 to $130 for executive members. Now, if you don't have a membership, it includes, of course, the free samples, but also discounts on food, gas, home insurance, and travel, plus Plus, it has an annual 2% reward on qualified purchases. But with this fee increase, of course, you're going to save a little bit less. However, the maximum reward for the executive membership will increase to $1,250 from $1,000. Now, this increase will affect around 52 million members, and you can probably tell by that number, the company is doing pretty well. Its stock is up 34% so far this year. Now, analysts say the market has been expecting a fee hike for a couple of years, as management usually raises rates every 5 to 6 years. And they say it should also provide a solid lift to revenue for the company and for the company stock.
Not surprising for some folks, yeah, indeed. Let's move to something unexpected in the media business. Apparently, someone has started a physical printed newspaper. How come?
Yes. So this is from two former reporters. They've launched a new community newspaper in Haida Gwaii, BC. So it's the first time for a regular print paper in the remote location in 4 years. And so the free biweekly Haida Gwaii News published its first issue on June 6th, and it circulated 3,000 copies for the about 5,000 residents of the islands, accessible only by boat or plane. Publisher Stacy Brzezowski says she soon actually started receiving checks in the mail and thank you notes for their coverage. She and the editor previously worked at the Haida Gwaii Observer, which actually stopped printing in 2020. More than 400 Canadian community papers have shut down since 2008. But here's more of why she wanted to start this paper.
Well, there's just so many things happening on our island, and we're so spread out. There's 6 communities, essentially, on this giant island, and we're cut off from the rest of the world. We have Facebook as our main communication, which is kind of ironic considering we can't share news on Facebook, but that's how everybody on this island communicates and shares our news in one way or another, and there's no accountability. It was needed.
So according to the local news project at Toronto Metropolitan University, the Haida Gwaii News is one of only a handful of new community outlets to open in Canada since the start of last year. 31 community newspapers have shut down in that same time period, mostly because of dwindling ad revenues. Now, the co-founders launched this paper with their own money. They have other jobs, so they work for free. Plus, they also have some ad revenue, monthly Patreon subscribers, and they had some one-time donations to get off the ground. And they also really think that this print format works really well in the area where cell and internet coverage is still quite limited.
Looks like the movie business is banking on sequels this summer. Why is that?
Well, that's because, the highest grossing films lately have not been originals. So far this year, there's been Despicable Me 4 and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And there's more to come with Deadpool and Wolverine and Gladiator 2. Shrek 5 will be hitting theaters in 2026. Wow. And recently, yes. Recently there's been buzz about a new Devil Wears Prada in the works. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
For sure, yes. And while some viewers may not like repeats, from a business point of view, the 3 highest grossing movies so far are sequels this year. So that is Dune 2, Inside Out 2, and Despicable Me 4. Here's Walt Hickey, who wrote a book called You Are What You Watch.
Typically, producers will allocate maybe like the same amount of money that they spent making the movie towards promoting and advertising and distributing it. And that can really add up. And so one nice thing about sequels is that they actually kind of add in a little bit of value on that promotional end because they're already pre-established characters. They're already well liked. You don't have to introduce a new concept to millions of people and get them to want to go. And so your dollar goes that much further when you're promoting the film.
So, Faith, based on his research, studios have a much better shot at breaking even with a sequel rather than original, apparently.
Huh. Makes sense. We'll have to see. The markets today, how are the Thursday morning numbers?
In Europe, stocks are higher as global markets look ahead to the next U.S. inflation reading. So Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are up after big U.S. Tech rallied overnight on optimism over Federal Reserve rate cuts. So Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is up at 10 cents to 82.20 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up at $12.36 to $2,383.62 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.06 of a cent to 73.4 cents U.S.
Really nice chatting with you. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Take good care.
Okay, thanks, Faith.
It's Krista Lee Ramlakan at the CBC National Business Desk. Ticketmaster is sounding the alarm on a huge security breach that could have put customers' personal and financial data at risk. We're going to hear more from technology analyst Carmi Levy. There are weather advisories in effect, heat warnings up for much of northern and southern Manitoba. So be aware of the very hot weather today. You'll want to check in with friends, particularly those who are older and younger folks as well. We'll keep you up to date on the weather forecast and all of those things still to come on the program. First, though, at about 14 minutes before 7 o'clock, wouldn't it be nice if you could borrow money and not have to pay the lender back the amount loaned plus interest? It's exactly what some credit card companies offer when you switch to their company. While these zero-interest loans can provide temporary relief from high interest payments, there are pitfalls users should consider before signing up for one. Personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed-Haq has more.
In today's high interest rate environment, seeking the lowest rate possible makes sense. After all, every point lower is money in your pocket and not towards interest payments. Credit card companies sometimes offer zero interest loans on any balance transferred, as long as you qualify for the credit card. This means no interest payments on that debt during the promotional period, which can be up to 1 year.
I think the 0% interest loans, they really reel people in, right? People get really excited by the idea of not having to pay interest.
Parween Mander is a money coach based in Vancouver. She has helped her clients pay down debt and save hundreds of thousands of dollars. She says zero interest loans can be a good short-term solution, but using them alone won't work to change your financial situation.
So a lot of people, if they're not very careful, that 6 month or 12 month period can go by very quickly without their debt actually being paid off. And now they're actually, paying off more interest later.
Mander says the real work of paying down debt is changing your spending habits. Many people fail to see the opportunity that comes with zero interest loans.
And this is where a lot of people go wrong, which is understanding that the only way that we pay off your debt is through extra debt payments. A balance transfer, while it's helpful in that time frame, you also need to make sure you have a plan to be putting extra payments each month towards that debt to pay that off and actually take advantage of that breathing room and being able to pay off the principal balance faster.
So I think these are great products that you could take advantage of, but it is really important for people to read the fine print and understand what other fees or conditions might be involved.
Eva Wong is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Borrowell, a fintech company focused on offering loans and easier access to credit scores. She says using credit cards with promotional rates can be a great way to create financial room in your household budget, but adds users need to be very organized if they're using them to their advantage.
The positive, I think, is if someone's really proactive, they can go from one balance transfer card like this to another one. I think what a lot of credit card companies are betting on is that, we'll forget or something comes up. And I think we've all forgotten, right? It's like, oh, I'm late paying this bill. And, these products really reward people who are on top of their finances.
Wong says applying for 2 credit cards a year is reasonable, but space your applications every 6 months. A frequency higher than that could impact your credit score. But outside of that time frame, she says, you should consider applying for new credit.
I feel like all of us should do this actually, because there are promotional rates, and as long as you're, again, reading the fine print, a lot of times there are sign-up offers, whether it's a zero interest promotional rate, or there's just like other things if you're not carrying a balance, where because these companies want your business, there are often, great points or cash back offers if you're spending on that card.
Money expert Mander says if you are signing up for a zero interest loan, take advantage of this time by paying your other debt down. Focus on getting your finances in order and save more. More importantly, don't go into more credit card debt. That is true for buy now, pay later programs too that carry zero interest for a short time. It's easy to start spending when your cash flow improves, even temporarily. But in the end, it's a debt you owe and you will have to pay back eventually. And if you wait for your promotional period to end, that debt could balloon quickly with higher interest rates. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Haq.
Thanks very much, Rubina. I'm Faith Fundal here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. We're 9 minutes before 7 o'clock. By now, you might have your credit monitoring code from Ticketmaster. As you've been hearing, Ticketmaster warned customers about a possible data breach, saying an unauthorized third party access customers' personal information, which could include names, contact details, even payment card information. The breach happened between April 2nd and May 18th. Carmi Levy is a tech analyst joining us in London, Ontario. Hi, Carmi.
Good morning, Faith. Great to be with you.
So that's a credit monitoring code. Is that something that people should be using?
It is. It's certainly one of the things that you would want to consider using if you, in fact, were one of the people who received these email addresses. It gives you awareness. It highlights, for example, whether the data that was liberated in this breach and is now out there on the dark web, whether in fact it is being used in other attacks, whether it is in the hands of the people that you don't want it to be in the hands of. So it's all about opening your eyes, turning your head on a 360-degree swivel, and basically not ignoring the risk, but keeping an eye out for the kinds of activities that you can expect in the wake of a breach of this magnitude.
So it's, of course, mitigating the risk because of all of this. I mean, you wouldn't perhaps need to mitigate the risk if it didn't happen. What do we know about what actually happened?
Well, we started seeing reports early last month that a hacking group known as Shiny Hunters, they always give themselves weird names. They claimed that they had
right.
I know. They claimed that they'd stolen data from 560 million Ticketmaster customers, and they were going to release it into the wild, sell it to other criminals, unless they got a ransom of $500,000 US, or about 700,000 Canadian. Then things kind of went dark until those emails started showing up, till the company started advising its customers just this week. And so there's really no indication. We don't know if they're connected or not, but the way it usually works in cases like this is there is a data breach, and then it falls into the wrong hands, and then different groups try their hands at different things. And what matters to the customer, to the victim here, whose information is out there, it really doesn't matter how they got to that point. What matters is it's out there, and they better batten down the hatches and be vigilant, because things are about to get kind of crazy.
I mean, is there a way, so if you don't get an email from Ticketmaster, or you might get an email later, but if you haven't, how would someone know that their data has been, is part of a breach, essentially?
Well, I think, if you are a Ticketmaster customer and you haven't received this email, I think you should assume that potentially you're part of this, that your data might have been compromised. But, if a company dropped the ball on allowing the data to be stolen in the first place, I really wouldn't trust them to be able to differentiate between different classes of customers. So assume that you're in scope. And even if you haven't dealt with Ticketmaster, today we're talking about Ticketmaster, but on other days we've talked about the Desjardins breach, we've talked about the Indigo breach, the CRA cyber attack. So hardly a day goes by that any organization doesn't. So this could be anyone, it could be any of us. And the things that you would notice are that you might start getting more phishing or spear phishing messages in your inbox, and that's where it looks like it's coming from a legitimate source and it's trying to get you to click on a link. But of course, if you click on that link, you're not booking a meeting, you're not downloading that payment or anything like that. You are, in fact, loading ransomware on your device, and you've now been had. You might also notice your transactions. So because this breach included identifiable information, contact information, as well as financial information like credit and debit card numbers and expiration dates, we are starting to see that information being used to make purchases on behalf, illegitimate purposes, on behalf of those individuals. So take a look at your transaction history, and you might actually see on your credit card statement small transactions designed to test the waters to see if it works. And that, of course, you'll want to contest, but that's also a sign that your data is out there and it is being used against you.
So adding that to second step authentication might be helpful because if your credit card company isn't sure or your debit card company isn't sure about a transaction, they might be sending you that sort of second code that you might get it by text or by email, right?
That's amazing advice, Faith. And that's you've highlighted an important kind of point here is that the security features, the additional security features are there to all of us. They're available for the taking, but most of us don't turn them on. They're not default activated. We have to go in and activate them, and many of us don't. So two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, where it's almost like another lock on the door. We can go into the settings and turn it on. Same thing with encryption. Many of us don't turn on encryption, and we should, because each one of these is not a perfect solution, but it's another layer. It's like a second lock on the door. It means that someone else will be victimized because they're an easier mark and you're a little bit tougher to get to. So, if we make life hard for cyber criminals, even when companies like Ticketmaster get compromised, we reduce the potential, we reduce that risk profile that we, in fact, will be targeted. They'll go after an easier mark.
I remember something was wrong with my accounts when I started getting all those reset codes, and I thought I did not ask for any of these resets. So quickly changed the passwords, and there we go.
Exactly, and that's often a sign as well. You'll start seeing these, someone tried to change your password. Was that you? If it isn't you, just ignore it. If it is you, then here's the code. But the problem is that is an indication that someone is at least trying to knock on the door. So even though they can't get in this time, it still tells me that someone's got my information and they're trying. So it's a reminder to us that we have to take this more seriously. That we can't just stick our heads in the sand and ignore the risk. We really should be going into our settings and turning on all these things. We really should be monitoring things more closely. We should be talking to our bank and saying, hey, I'm seeing this. What would you recommend that I do to tighten security on my financial accounts? And they will walk you through it. I've done it with mine, and they'll happily tell you the latest and greatest guidance that they have for their customers. But none of that happens unless you take that first step.
It's always good to have you, Carmi. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take good care.
Appreciating your face. Thank you.
Carmi Levy, tech analyst. He is in London, Ontario. Heather Wells is in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in our CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and joining us with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a judge is going to reveal this morning if Jeremy Skibitsky will go to prison or a psychiatric hospital. The Winnipeg man's admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but his lawyer argues he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Heat warnings cover most of Manitoba today, and if you need to stay cool, the city is on it. It has set up cooling stations at leisure centers, libraries, pools, and some community centers. City-run pools, splash pads are also open. And 8 hydration stations are set up in the core, the North End, and the West End. We're going to hear more what community groups are doing to help people. That's coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Shortly goodbye to the folks watching on CBC television. Thank you for making us part of your morning routine. But if you want to continue, you can continue watching on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. And hello as well to folks who are listening. Just about a minute away from the top of the hour. Thank you to our streaming producer, Brad Lillies. Corey Funk is our director. He is waiting for your call if you see issues on the commuter line, 204-788-3093. I'm Faith Fundal. Abby Adiemi and I will be back in our next half hour to talk about how to deal with the heat. We're also going to talk about AI. If you're thinking of using it to create a resume, you may want to rethink that. That conversation coming up after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
The dating world is so crazy. This guy seemed normal on his profile.
I'm Mark Kelly. Dating apps have been a big way for couples to meet for years now, but a growing number of singles are leaving them behind, saying they're burnt out and putting their faith in real-life meetups instead. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
A judge will reveal this morning if Jeremy Skibitsky will go to prison or a psychiatric hospital. The Winnipeg man has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022. But his lawyer argued he is not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Now the judge must decide whether he was experiencing a psychotic episode or driven by a perverse sexual interest. Karen Pauls has more and a warning. Some of the details in this story are disturbing.
In a police interview, Jeremy Skibitsky confessed to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman who's been given the name Buffalo Woman.
I killed 4 people. Okay.
During the trial, defense witnesses testified Skibitsky was suffering from schizophrenia at the time of the killings. Anna Seghetti is a Toronto lawyer who represents people who have been found not criminally responsible.
It would be unfair to incarcerate someone who was ill at the time of their offending, regardless of how brutal or how violent their act was. What they need is treatment and assistance to reduce their risk.
Crown experts testified Skibitsky is a homicidal necrophiliac, a rare condition where people are aroused by having sex with someone they've killed. Brandon Trask is a former Crown prosecutor who now teaches law at the University of Manitoba.
Typically, if we see cases where the defense is making this sort of an argument, it's usually in relation to sort of a single incident or multiple incidents, but over a short period of time. Here, obviously, you've got multiple victims, and those offenses spread out over a relatively elongated period of time. That's very unusual.
A garbage dump is not a burial site for our women and girls.
The killing sparked demands to search a landfill for the remains of 2 of the victims. That search is now set to begin in the fall. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Indigenous leaders are expressing a lot of frustration with the Liberal government at the Assembly of First Nations in Montreal.
Quit being on your phone or talking and listen to us. That's what you're here for.
You're ignoring my emails and my letters. And if Trudeau, if you have balls enough, come to my territory.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will try to lean into some of that outrage today. He is about to make his first appearance in person to address the Assembly. In the past, he has only ever sent a recorded video message to the Chiefs, and they say if he wants to be Canada's next Prime Minister, Poilievre has to prove he will take each First Nations issues seriously. After weeks of criticism abroad and at home, it appears the federal government is ready to commit to spending 2% of its GDP on defense. Here's what Defense Minister Bill Blair told a NATO panel yesterday.
I'm hoping over the next few days that we'll be able to articulate for our colleagues a credible and verifiable path for Canada and the investments we have to make.
A senior Canadian official told CBC News the federal government could unveil a timeline to hit NATO's spending target today, likely at the very end of the Leaders' Summit in Washington. Those NATO leaders are feeling the pressure of a war going badly for Ukraine, and they are stepping up their military support. Canada announced additional funds yesterday. As Murray Brewster reports, the military alliance is trying to reassure Ukraine it will be a full NATO member one day.
We are not doing this because we want to prolong a war. We are doing this because we want to end the war as soon as possible.
That was how NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg described the series of measures Western allies are taking to bolster Ukraine. Measures such as a €40 billion fund to provide the war-ravaged country with steady financing and predictable military support into the future. Canada's contribution to that is $500 million.
Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you. Happy to see you.
It was announced as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sat down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the margins of the NATO summit. In addition, Canada will be expanding its effort to train Ukrainian pilots to fly Western warplanes like the F-16. Zelensky says it's an important morale booster, especially after this week's deadly missile strike on a Kyiv children's hospital.
Very important for all our people to hear it, and thank you for your help. And additional military aid, $500 million, huge support. Thank you so much. I think it's very important to strengthen our heroic guys on the front line.
Canada has offered medical assistance and other humanitarian support in the aftermath of the hospital attack. Zelensky will formally meet with the NATO Council today to discuss the direction of the war. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Washington.
Bosnians are marking a dark chapter of their history
A ceremony will remember thousands of Muslim men and boys killed in the Srebrenica massacre 29 years ago. For the first time, today is also UN-designated International Day of Remembrance. Freelance reporter Guy Delani has more.
3 decades on, Bosnia and Herzegovina is still burying the victims of the Srebrenica massacre. DNA testing identifies more people every year. Their remains are retrieved from morgues and mass graves, and that brings long-awaited closure to family members. 14 people are being buried in today's ceremony at Potocari Cemetery, close to the site of the massacre. The 5,000 participants of the annual Peace March are among the mourners. They include survivors of the massacre. Reshid Dervishevic is one of them. It was like the end of the world, he says. Along the way, people were leaving behind their brother, their son, their father. Srebrenica was supposed to be a UN-protected safe area, but towards the end of the war, Bosnian Serb forces overran it. Their military chief, Ratko Mladic, and political leader Radovan Karadzic are both serving life sentences for genocide. But there's controversy over the recent UN resolution declaring an International Day of Remembrance. Serbia viewed it as an attempt to paint Serbs as a genocidal people. But experts on the region say the resolution plays an important role. James Kerr-Lindsay is a Balkans specialist at the London School of Economics.
This has joined with the Holocaust, with Rwanda, as a key moment in how the world thinks about how it needs to address issues of mass murder, of genocide.
Meanwhile, the long-running search for victims goes on. Guy Delorne for CBC News, Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Roughly 1 million people in Houston, Texas are still without power. Hurricane Beryl made landfall there Monday as a Category 1 storm. The city has also been under a heat advisory for the past 2 days, and no power means no air conditioning. Acting Texas Governor Dan Patrick says crews are working as quickly as they can to restore service.
When you don't have power, when it's pitch black at night, when it's hot as Hades during the day, you don't have access to food that you normally had, it's a miserable situation.
Power is expected to be restored to 750,000 customers by Sunday. An evacuation order has been issued for a community in central British Columbia. Residents in the northeast region of Wells are ordered to leave immediately. The Cornish Mountain Fire was discovered yesterday, and officials say it is a threat to safety. The fire is currently burning 70 hectares of land, and British Columbia is now dealing with 146 active wildfires. An Alberta town has declared a local health care crisis. It is dealing with an extreme doctor shortage. As Julia Wong reports, it's digging into its own wallet to help fix the problem.
Do you have a family doctor?
No, I do not.
How long have you not had a family doctor?
Since September of last year.
Nadine Bancroft is one of thousands of people in Hinton, about 300 kilometers west of Edmonton, without a family doctor. The town of roughly 10,000 used to have the equivalent of 15 family physicians. Now there are only 6, trying to cover all the expenses. Dr. Joel Buhire.
We came to the town as a physician group almost as a last resort because we've tried many different ways of making this work, but doing the math, it was looking like within 6 months we would no longer be able to keep the lights at the clinic on.
The town is now keeping the clinic afloat with $1 million over 2 years. A difficult decision, says Mayor Nicholas Nesson, but one where the municipality felt there was no choice.
I don't think that municipalities should be putting this money up. I also don't think that we have a choice. We absolutely require higher levels of government to start looking at our healthcare system and start bringing solutions to some of these problems.
Alberta's health minister, in a statement, says she appreciates the mayor's solution-based approach and says the province is working on ways to address rural healthcare issues. Julia Wong, CBC News, Hinton, Alberta.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you are looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And good morning to the folks who are watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Brad Lillies is our streaming producer. With their big fuzzy ears and round bodies, black bears look like big old cuddly dogs, but they are far from it. And getting bears used to us can have negative impacts on their cubs. We'll have that conversation in this hour of the program. Also, mosquitoes get a bad rap in Manitoba, but there might be more to like about the pests than you think. We'll chat about the good things mosquitoes do when they take a break from feasting on humans. First, though, if you're thinking of using AI to create a resume, an expert says you may want to rethink that again. More on that coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. First, though, to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk, and Heather Wells joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky confessed to killing 4 indigenous women in 2022, but argues he should not be found criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Returning some unclaimed family history to Winnipeggers. An employee at Empire Drugs found a box in the basement of that North End pharmacy. Old-fashioned film photos had been developed 60 years ago and were never claimed. We'll hear what he's doing about it in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sabi Adiemi has a look at the weather as well. Good morning. It's hot.
It's hot. That's all I can tell you. 21 in the city. We're seeing some sunny, the sun make its appearance at this time. We should expect a sunny day with some hazy conditions to go with that. It's going to be breezy with winds picking up from the south later in the day. The highs for today will reach 32. The normals for this period of the year is actually 26. But with a humidex, it's going to be feeling like 37 today. And for tonight, clear skies we will see in the evening and then becoming partly cloudy overnight and a slight chance of showers. There's a risk of thunderstorm also into the overnight period, and winds will light by late evening. We do have a heat warning in effect for the entire province. In northern Manitoba, that heat warning is in effect due to, the exceptional high temperatures, and we are seeing daytime highs reaching around 30 degrees, and overnight will not really be cool because it's due to the humidity. It's still going to feel warm, and then it's going to gradually cool down later. This heat actually will be presenting a lot of problems for people, so you might want to take care. And it's the same situation for the southern part of the province also, where the value is expected to reach 40 today and Friday, and we are going to be seeing daytime temperatures exceeding 32, so you need to stay safe out there. Drink plenty of water, and I will always remember critters, the pets that can't speak. Please fill their bowls with water and watch out for them, and also the elderly, watch out for them. But right now, Winnipeg, 21 degrees, expect a sunny day, and we're heading to a high of 32.
Thanks very much, Abby. And like Abby said, drink plenty of water regularly, and before you feel thirsty, because if you are thirsty, it's too late. It's not a good sign of dehydration. Extreme heat can be problematic for lots of folks. You will want to limit your direct sun exposure. But if you start to feel the effects of heat illness like swelling, rash, cramps, fainting, heat exhaustion, heat strokes, or worsening health conditions, you'll want to make sure that you take care and call for medical help as well if you need to. We'll keep you up to speed throughout the show here on what to do in this heat, so stay tuned for that. We're going to tell you what to do if you see any traffic issues. Hello, Corey Funk. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, and there hasn't actually been many traffic issues out there, so I will just tell you what to do. Call the commuter line if you're walking, biking, driving. Would love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Coming up to 15 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. Earlier this week, we spoke with someone about AI filtering through resumes and how it might make it harder to get a job. What if you used AI to write a resume for you? David Gerhardt is head of computer science at the University of Manitoba. He says it may not work as well as you think. David is joining us by Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, Faith.
How do you feel about using AI? I mean, in all of these things, we'll talk about using AI to create your resume, but using AI to filter through resumes, what do you think?
It's tricky. It's a challenging prospect because hiring managers today have hundreds and hundreds of resumes to get through, and many of them are not particularly high quality. And so it is not unreasonable to seek out tools that might make that job easier, to sort through and find the gems that they actually want to speak to these folks in person. However, when you have a large stack of paperwork and you only look at the top little bit, if no human looks at at the rest of the work, then that's problematic because there may be stuff that gets missed. There may be errors that get made. So the use of any of these tools should be performed with caution.
So then why wouldn't you use AI to help come up with keywords? A prompt like, help me write a resume that an AI sorter will actually pay attention to. Like, why would that be a bad thing?
So on the surface, it looks like a good idea. The challenge is that a lot of folks are using these tools sort of out of the box. The base AI has a particular way of speaking and a particular turn of phrase that is becoming easy to identify. So if your sort of executive summary says cultivated or spearheaded or fostered, these are words that are very commonly used by AI, which means they're the kind of words that an AI filter might also pick up, so that it becomes this sort of competition between these two AIs, one writing the resumes and one trying to filter the resumes. And then again, the humans aren't talking to each other.
I mean, resumes can be pretty personal, right? And especially when you write cover letters, folks who have spent the time to demonstrate that they understand the company, that they understand what the company might be looking for, and how that connection with themselves might be useful for the employer. I mean, it's hard to write something like that. How do you get around that if you want to use AI? How do you get help so that it's there?
Yeah, and these are really powerful tools that people should not be afraid of using, but we should be careful to use them in the way that will give the best results. So in this case, the trick would be to teach the AI who you are, right? Be careful about using too much personal information because these AIs are tied back to their central clouds and all that kind of stuff. But if you describe, your approach to the world and the things that you're good at and your experiences, and also describe the company that you want to work at, and give the AI some personality, encourage it to be a particular kind of writer or a particular kind of HR manager, then you're likely to avoid those sort of base level default phrases and get stuff that is more closer to what you're looking for. And then, of course, the most important thing is to take whatever the AI generates and then rewrite it yourself. Look carefully at what it says and then use that as a tool for your writing as opposed to a replacement for your writing.
Right, so it could be a template. You already talked about being careful with personal information. What are the risks when you use AI, particularly when you include the training part of, ask me questions so that you can learn who I am kind of thing?
That's right. Yeah, you can provide the AI with a script that says, ask me some questions and I'll tell you who I am. And then it will ask the questions that it thinks is most relevant to figure out how to write a good resume. But every interaction that you make with the AI, except in certain circumstances, will be collected by the company who made the AI and may be used in the training of the next model, right? That's part of the terms of reference or terms of service for most of these systems. Some of them, if you pay for it, then they have ways to say that they're not going to use that training data. But for the most part, the companies building these models, their whole thing for the next generation of these models is more data, more data. And so using the interactions that every human makes in these conversations as training data for the next model is part of their structure.
So you may not want to say, I make I don't, by the way, but I make $200,000 a year and I want something in this range. That might not be helpful then.
Yeah, you want to be a bit careful. But again, it's interesting to find out sort of what the AI already knows about you. Like if you're a public figure or somebody that the world might know about, asking the AI who you are is telling, right? It's also very interesting if you're not necessarily a public figure. The real challenge, of course, with these models is that if they don't know the answer, they'll make something up. And what they make up is often amusing.
I mean, the sort of whole thing about this is the human-to-human connection, right? When someone uses tech, to assist them, that human connection, there's already something in between that, right? How do you keep that and also include AI or use the tech that's available to you?
Yeah, we're used to having technology mediate our lives. I mean, this is a thing that's sort of commonplace today, right? You and I are talking through a medium of technology. When that medium starts to replace the actual interactions, right? If I write a letter to my boss, and I use AI to write that letter to my boss, and then my boss reads that letter, but uses AI to summarize it, right? Then at some point, we're not even talking anymore. There's just little tiny bits of information passing from my brain to my boss's brain, but the AIs are the ones that are actually having the conversation. So more ways to actually get in front of people, more ways to be face-to-face, to use all of the structures of communication rather than just text and the technology that assists it.
David, I hope you'll be in studio next time, because now I'm wondering, are you really David?
I think it would be good to find out.
Thank you for making time. Take good care.
You're very welcome.
David Gerhardt is head of computer science at the University of Manitoba.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
We're going to talk about sports shortly, including what's happening with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Stay tuned for that. First, though, the finalists for the Polaris Music Prize are whittling down today from 40 albums to 10. The shortlist for the prize will be announced across the CBC Music Network. There are artists vying for this year's prize, which include first-time nominees The Beaches and Talk and past winners like Jeremy Dutcher. This is Jeremy Dutcher with Skijoni Wikuk.
Ada kadwat poka wala bada ke pagmon mo na madewala no che e also you know che skiji no nege yala wa dol te no madewala no ni ba ni kron ka to
That is Jeremy Dutcher and Skijinu Wikuk. He is a former Polaris Prize winner from Tobic First Nation, and his new record is on this year's long list. The 10 finalists for this year's short list will be announced today at 2 p.m. We're at 26 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. Let's head to your CBC National Sports Desk, and Paul McGowan joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Faith.
Paul, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers look like they'll have reinforcements when they take on Calgary tomorrow. Talk more about that.
Zach Collaros looks to be back under center for tomorrow's game. Missed last week's game with a chest injury, but has been a full participant in practice this week. No official lineup yet, but all indications are that he'll be back. It's been a bit of an odd year for the two-time most outstanding player. He's usually at or near the top of most statistical categories, but he's been one of the worst statistical quarterbacks, not only in the West, but in the entire CFL this year. Running back Brady Oliveira, though, doesn't think fans will have to wait long to see vintage Collaros again.
It was a slow start for lots of us, for this entire team. We didn't start the way we wanted to start this season. For myself, I didn't start the season the way I wanted to start. And, Zach might say the same for himself, but this is the week, I think it's he's really going to show what he's all about. And we've seen it time and time again the last couple of seasons of who he is and what he does best. So just really excited to have him back out there with us.
Yeah, hopefully Oliveira is right in that respect. We'll find out tomorrow night.
Fingers crossed. There was an Olympic tune-up last night in basketball against the U.S. How'd they do?
Canada started well. They were up 11-1 at one point in the first quarter, but it was all United States from there, an 86-72 final from Las Vegas. For Canada, though, still time to prepare ahead of the Olympics. They finalized that Olympic roster yesterday, and a far cry from what this roster used to look like. 11 of their 12 players have NBA experience. The one player who doesn't is Melvin Ejim. Now, he plays professionally in Spain, and you might think that the one player without NBA experience might be a spare part, but Canadian GM Rowan Barrett says Ejim will play a big role in Paris.
There's a number of our players that really look up to him as a bigger brother. He provides calm. And look, sometimes you're coming off the court and you're heated. The coaches are focusing on what's going on in the system. Sometimes you need a teammate that grabs you by the jersey and says, hey, we're all right. Sometimes you need that in the locker room at halftime before the coaches address the team, somebody to calm the waters. I think that Melvin is very uniquely positioned to do that.
So interesting that the one guy without NBA experience will be a mentor to all of these guys who play at such a high level. A couple of more weeks of prep for Canada. That first game of Olympic competition comes in just over 2 weeks' time.
And before you go, you have some cycling news.
Yeah, Claire Amond of Quebec is 27. She's a lawyer by trade, but during the pandemic, she took up cycling. She is now a professional rider, has raced in the Tour de France, among other races, and right now is competing at the Giro d'Italia, a road race in Italy. And the 27-year-old lawyer just posted her first ever cycling win in stage 4 of that race. Here is Claire Amond.
I just didn't know if they would catch me or not, and I just kept going. And yeah, I was super glad when I got to the last climb that I was still alone. And I realized at that moment that I could actually win, so that was really great, and I just committed 100%. It's my first win ever, so here in the Giro it's even more special, and I'm really proud.
Yeah, if you've been putting off starting a hobby, there go your last remnants of an excuse. She is a lawyer and a professional stage-winning cyclist. Good for Claire Amond. She does sit 27th in the overall standings of the Giro d'Italia, but I don't think she's thinking about that today.
Making us all look bad.
Yeah, right?
Thanks very much, Paul, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Faith.
Paul
Sounds
McGowan
good.
from CBC National Sports Desk. I'm Faith Fundal here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and of course on your CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk about the weather and all things that you need to know, including a conversation about bears and bees. That's coming up after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. We're all talking about heat. It is going to be stifling in Winnipeg today. Most of Manitoba, in fact, under heat warnings today. For Winnipeg, sunny, hazy, getting windy as well with a high of 32, the humidex 37. The decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky confessed to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but argued he should be found not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Law professor Brandon Trask says having the trial heard by a judge instead of a jury could help people better understand the outcome.
Seeing that we're going to get a dispassionate set of reasons because we're getting a written decision from a judge alone, I think that will actually be very helpful in moving forward as a community, frankly.
Skibitsky pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, Morgan Harris, and an unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishike Ikwe Iban, or Buffalo Woman. Well, Winnipeggers who need to beat the heat today have a few options. The city has set up cooling stations at leisure centers, libraries, pools, and at some community centers. City-run pools and splash pads are open, and 8 hydration stations are set up in the core of the city as well as the North End and West End. Meanwhile, Community 204 is handing out bottled water to people who are homeless. Coordinator Alexis Tashnak says they're also looking out for signs of heat-related illness.
You can see that they're sweaty, they're hot. A lot of them are extremely tanned, and so I want to make sure that they're feeling okay. If we are unable to take care of them medical-wise, then we would make the appropriate calls, whether that would be Main Street Project or DCSP, or if worse comes to worse, 911.
Tashnak urges people who see anyone who is vulnerable to ask them if they're okay and if they need water. A long-standing grocery store in St. Vital is closing its doors after decades in business. Dakota Family Foods announcing yesterday to the public with heavy hearts it is closing. Scott Clement's family has owned the grocery store for 20 years. He says there were a number of factors behind his decision, from not being able to come to a lease agreement with the building owner to 9 months of construction that put a dent in his business. Clement says telling staff was difficult.
The last 48 hours have been really challenging. The first part, I had to, inform the staff. That was tough. I have some long-term staff and some staff I'm very proud of, and it was tough to have to break that news to them.
Clement says when the store will close for good will depend on his staff and inventory. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is supposed to speak in person today at the Assembly of First Nations Summit in Montreal. And Indigenous leaders will be watching the man who could become Canada's next Prime Minister. Don Tom is chief of the Sartlip Band on Vancouver Island.
I hope to hear that he fully accepts and wants to work with First Nations. Our experience in the past hasn't been so great working with Conservative government, so we're a little bit worried.
The Assembly of First Nations is the largest Indigenous organization in Canada. U.S. President Joe Biden will hold a news conference today to address concerns about his political future and his plan to run for the White House again. The Biden campaign is in crisis after his shaky debate performance 2 weeks ago. John Zogby is an American pollster. He doesn't think there's anything Biden can say to change the minds of voters.
It's almost irrelevant, I think, how he performs in the news conference, because I think decisions have already been made.
You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Returning some unclaimed family history to Winnipeggers.
That's Grandma, and I'm not sure who the little child is with her. It's one of my aunties or uncles, and I was hoping I could find out who this is.
A customer at Empire Drugs explaining to Dwayne Hines, who works there, just who is in the photos he found in the basement of that North End pharmacy. Old-fashioned film photos had been developed 60 years ago but never claimed. Hines used social media to find family members.
I'm overwhelmed. Just this little box made such a great impact, and the response I'm getting has been so positive and wonderful, and people are really sending me private messages thanking me for putting the effort into putting them up.
There were 30 packages of unclaimed photos, and Hines hopes through the names and addresses he can find all the families those photos belong to. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Hello as well to the folks streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Brad Lillies is our streaming producer. You heard Heather talk about the heat there. We'll tell you exactly what the forecast is for heat. But the advice for today, drink plenty of water. And don't wait to feel thirsty, because if you feel thirsty, it's too late. And you'll want to consider staying out of the sunshine, the direct sunshine. Try and find shade. And as Heather mentioned, you can use public buildings as shelters or use splash pads and misting stations. Yeah, it's going to be a hot day today, Abby, Eddie, and me, right?
Yes, it's going to be really, really hot today. And one thing I would want to add to the list of how to stay safe, which is more like like an advice. Please don't leave living things in the car, like be it a pet or a child. Don't leave them in the car, because if it's going to be really, really hot in there. Don't leave them in vehicles. Take them along with you. Even if you're trying to return the trolley at the shopping mall, don't tell the kids to wait in the car while you do that. Just take them along and do whatever you have to do. That is because of the highs that we're going to be seeing reaching 40 between today and Friday. It will be really, really hot, so you need to take care. Right now, Winnipeg 21, we're expecting sunny conditions with some haze developing and breezy winds by mid-afternoon. We will get to a high of 32, though it's going to feel hotter than that with a humidex. And then for tonight, we'll see some clouds roll in with a chance of showers and a thunderstorm in the forecast. Heading west to Brandon, 19 at the moment. Today, we will see a sunny start, then a mix of sun and clouds, a chance of showers late in the day, and a risk of thunderstorm. Highs for that region around 33, though it's going to feel hotter than that because we are going to be getting to the range of 40 with a humidex. Some breezy winds, it will be feeling warm from the west. Moving north to Thompson, 19 at the moment. You've got some local smoke due to activities in Alberta. You'll see a mix of sun and clouds today, a good chance of showers, a risk of thunderstorm. Highs around 27, and it will feel hotter. Even you might get to see some clouds later and showers possible. Further north in Churchill, it is 12 degrees, sunny at the moment. Then we'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. Highs of 17. For tonight, clear skies. Down in Dauphin, 24 at the moment, mainly sunny day with haze. Tonight, you will definitely be seeing a chance of showers and thunderstorm. You're getting to a high of 33 today, feeling like 40 degrees. Gimli sitting at 19 for the Interlake region today. It's going to be sunny with haze, becoming breezy. We're going to get to a high of 32, though it's going to feel like 37 with the humidity. And there's a chance of showers and thunderstorm also in the forecast. Steinbach is at 19 degrees, sunny and hazy day ahead. Highs around 32 degrees. It's going to be breezy from the south also. And finally, Morris, 19 degrees. That's what you are currently sitting at for the Pembina Valley region. It's going to be a sunny day with some hazy conditions, breezy from the west, breezy from the south rather, and we'll see highs around 32, which will be hotter. But for Winnipeg today, expect sunny and hazy conditions, becoming breezy, and we are going to be warming up to 32, but it will be feeling hotter. Plus, we are under that heat warning, as is for all of southern and northern Manitoba. Like, the entire province is going to be hot. The humidex is going to be close to 40 today. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 21 degrees.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Abby, Eddie, Emmy in Control Room 15. You probably heard some voices behind him as well as we get our next guest set up. Corey Funk is our studio director, and it is going to be hot. Is the commute as hot in terms of people feeling hot?
If there's one thing that's pretty chilly out there, it's the commute so far. Haven't heard anything on the commuter line. But if you're out there and you do see something going on, give me a call. I'd love to hear from you if you're walking, biking, driving. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much. We're at 20 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. What do you do if you encounter a black bear while camping? As it turns out, a lot of happy campers don't actually know. Yesterday, we heard from Scouts Canada volunteer Matthew Coe about a new helpline they've set up for campers. While doing research for that helpline, they learned that when it comes to bear safety, a lot of us are short on the bear facts.
In this most recent survey, we asked, hey, what would you do if you encountered a black bear while you're at camping?
What did they say?
And it is about even split between people who knew the right thing to do and people who knew not the right thing to do.
And I mean, that must be concerning because I would imagine my threshold would be we should probably have at least 90% of I know what to do, right?
And that's why we have the helpline. Now, what to do about a bear is not something that's covered in this version of the helpline. It's a fun little tidbit that we had a handful of people that decided, you know what, I'm gonna sing the bear necessities. Bears like that, surely.
That's Matthew Coe, volunteer scouter with Scouts Canada. So what would you do if you encounter a bear? George Hartland is with the Friends of Riding Mountain National Park and joining us now this morning. Good morning, George.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. What about you? When you heard Coe say that folks don't know what to do, how surprised are you?
Not totally surprised. I mean, we definitely always have visitors that are not sure what to do of any type of wildlife encounter, and bears in particular are a fascination for people. People do want to see them. They do want to be able to take pictures of them, but they don't necessarily know how to stay safe when they're out in their environment.
So let's get to that. Start with basics. I step out of my tent. I see a bear in front of me. Do I sing the bear necessities or do I run? What do I do?
You definitely don't run. Bears can run very fast, and just like with any wildlife, you don't want to turn your back on an animal because you do not know where they've gone to. So basically, you should be making lots of noise and making yourself look really big if you do encounter a bear out at your campsite or on a trail.
Does it depend on what kind of bear, or do you sort of just do that, and especially if you don't know what kind of bear you're dealing with, do you just do that anyway?
Well, it definitely is always a good idea to making noise when you're out on the trails or stuff like that, just to let any type of wildlife know in the area that something unusual is coming towards them and give them the opportunity to run, to hide, or to stay nice and still. Here in Manitoba, we only do have black bears that we are encountering in lower part of Manitoba here, so pretty much the same type of rules apply. Make noise, stay in large groups when you're out hiking, and just be aware of your surroundings.
People might encounter bears who might not appear afraid or scared of humans. What do you do in that case?
Definitely, again, if you do encounter a bear that is not going to be moving away, you want to make yourself as big as possible. We suggest standing on a rock or stuff like that, clapping hands, making lots of noise, making sure that the bear is aware of the fact that you're not an easy prey, and then as the bear stops or moves or such, just back away slowly, keeping contact or eyesight on that bear, and just keep backing away, increasing the distance between yourself and the animal, and that usually allows the bear to have a safe escape.
What are you hearing so far about bear and human encounters this season?
Here at Rocky Mountain National Park, we haven't had any real accounts of any real encounters with bears. We have lots of people that are stopping and taking photos of them and seeing them from safe distances and such, but they haven't been any type of problem bears or such in the campgrounds or stuff like that. And here at Rocky Mountain National Park, we have lots of great Bear in Mind programs. So at the Wissahickon Campground, you can take in a campfire program a few times out of the week to learn about the bear safety, and the Visitor Center has lots of great information on bears in Rocky Mountain National Park.
It's interesting because my first inclination when I hear people are taking photos of bears is just don't. But there actually are safe ways of doing that. What do you suggest to folks if they see a bear and they want to take a photo? How do they assess if it's a safe situation?
Well, definitely if you're traveling down the highway through the park here and you see a bear or any wildlife in the ditch area, make sure you pull over at a safe spot and to be able to take your photo. Do not get out of your car. Roll the window down, take the photo that you need, and then move on. We definitely encourage people to go out and look for wildlife and have wildlife viewing opportunities, but we don't want to create any accidents that may occur along the highway or put the animal in distress by having multiple vehicles stop and staying there for long periods of time. So take your photo, create your memory, and then continue on your journey.
What about when you're camping? Are there supplies that you think people should have in their backpack or in their cooler?
Definitely, when you're camping in a campground, you should keep your food in your vehicles and such. You're not supposed to be keeping food in your tents of any form. Even things like toothpaste and stuff like that have natural scents to them will attract any type of wildlife to your campsite.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we do have bear-proof containers that people can put their foods and that into. Keeping them inside your trailers, your vehicles, and stuff like that just keeps it safe and out of reach of all wildlife. And then definitely if you're going on longer hikes, you're not taking long food that has lots of smells to it. You're taking your granola bars and food that are easy to pack in and easy to pack out that don't have the scents to them.
Let's talk about the packing out part. How do you suggest that folks make sure that the site that they were in or the places that they've hiked in doesn't attract bears?
Definitely, leave your clean campsite, leave your clean picnic area. If you're out on a day hike trail or stuff like that, if you've stopped along a bridge or a nice viewpoint to take some pictures or to stop and have a snack, clean up your messes, take them out of the park, and just leave the park the way you found it for other people to enjoy.
George, pleasure chatting with you, and thanks for making time today. Take good care.
Not a problem. Have a great day.
You as well. George Hartland is the Chief Administrative Officer for Friends of Riding Mountain National Park.
Poor Terry O'Reilly. He's come down with another bad case of brand envy. He's green over the record company jokesters who reissue old hits.
Hello, mother. Hello, father.
He's admiring those much-loved school notebooks that aren't digital, but paper. Huh? And then there's Terry's favorite animator, Brand Envy, on Under the Influence. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
14 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Still to come, mosquitoes get a pretty bad rap in Manitoba, but there might be more to like about the pests than you think. We'll chat about the good things mosquitoes do when they take a break from feasting on humans. First, though, the Winnipeg Folk Fest kicks off tonight. There are 2 stages open tonight. At the main stage, Ruth Moody, Lucinda Williams, and Shaky Graves performing. On the other stage, known as Big Blue, the Grogans, and Winnipeg's own Roman Clark. We'll get the party going. This is Roman with Looking for Mine.
It turns out sometimes you get what you buy. Receipt of purchase written in stone over your head. I don't ever want to spend the time. No, I'm trying to make a cent to spend a dime. 'Cause everywhere I go, everyone I know is wearing the chains they chose. And every day I go out looking for mine. With those days behind us, wondering what we're gonna be when we grow up. I sleep and I wake, losing track of the end of the day. And I don't ever wanna have a plan. Oh no, I'm trying to turn a boy into a man. Yeah, 'cause everywhere I go, everyone I know is wearing the chains they chose. And every day I go out looking, I go out looking for mine. I cry sometimes, thinking of the way things are. And I try my hardest, work a little more just to work less. Yeah, I rack my brain, thinking things that I don't want to say. 'Cause I got my wish. I love a woman that I don't want to kiss. And I don't ever sleep it off at night. No, I don't. I wake up every morning to a fight. Yeah, 'cause everywhere I go, everyone I know is wearing the chains they chose. And every day I go out looking, everywhere I go, everyone I know is wearing the chains they chose. And every day I go out looking, oh, I
That's Roman Clark with Looking for Mine. Tonight, the Winnipeg Folk Fest kicks off with 2 stages open. Roman will be performing at the other stage known as Big Blue. We're 10 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, and you might want to listen really carefully because over the loud music, you may also be hearing this. Yes, I'm talking about mosquitoes. It's easy to feel like they are out to get us. Whether they're crashing your barbecue or ruining your day in the park, mosquitoes have a pretty terrible reputation for being annoying. But those tiny pests might actually be as bad as we think we are, not as bad as we think they are. From being pollinators to keeping our ecosystems in check, there is a chance they might be doing some good. That is, when they're not feasting on humans. Rosalind Murray is an assistant professor of biology at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, joining us now. Hi, Rosalind.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so surprised that mosquitoes pollinate. How does that work?
Yeah, so lots of flies pollinate. So mosquitoes are true flies, just like a housefly or other types of flies that you see around. They have a bad reputation because they do eat us, and they eat farm animals, and they eat all kinds of different vertebrates, including birds. They love birds. But they do pollinate as well. So they eat nectar, they get pollen on their bodies, and then they move between the different flowers, pollinating the different plants. And so one thing we don't know is how important they are as pollinators compared to other insects, including other flies and bees.
Right. And so from what we know so far, how would they compare to other pollinators like bees?
Yeah, so bees always top the list. I mean, it's also, there's a lot more research on bees as pollinators than there is on flies as pollinators. As someone that studies flies, I can confirm that bees are adorable. They buzz, they bumble. Some of them are even furry. So there's quite a lot of research happening on bees, and they are very effective pollinators, especially in places where we get proper summer.
Talk more about the misconceptions that you hear and you find about mosquitoes. What sort of stand out for you?
So one thing about mosquitoes is that they're completely terrible and we should just get rid of them. I mean, as a human who has had my fair share of mosquito bites in the field, I can confirm that they are a pest. They are quite frustrating to have around. They can ruin a lovely camping trip. However, they are extremely important to our ecosystems, especially in these places where we're lucky enough to have winter, and so we don't have some of the terrible disease vectors that they have in the tropics. So Canada is a fairly safe place, even if it is very annoying to have mosquitoes. But they are important as pollinators. We don't know quite how important. However, we do know a lot more about how important they are as prey. So as babies, they live in the water. So the eggs hatch in the water. We all know this. And then they emerge as terrestrial adults that are annoying to us. In the water, they're important prey for fish, for other insects that we do like as humans, like dragonflies.
So they really have a big part in sort of the big ecological circle.
Yes.
What would happen if, say, we decide, let's just get rid of all the mosquitoes? What could happen if that did happen?
Yeah, if we were able to get rid of all of them. So one thing is we spray. We often use these like broad-scale pesticides to get rid of them, which often get rid of lots of other beneficial insects. And if we did get rid of, somehow we magically could just get rid of mosquitoes, they would be replaced by something. So in places where we don't have mosquitoes, so the climate isn't hospitable for them, we do see that niche is filled by another pest. So one example is Scotland, where they don't have mosquitoes. They have something called a midge, and I did my PhD there, and the midges are equivalent to mosquitoes in terms of their annoyingness.
Right. Are they bigger too?
They're teensy. They're really, really small. They swarm you and get in everywhere. They're terrible.
That doesn't sound nice. Of course, climate change is something we've been talking about a lot. Does climate change have an impact on mosquitoes as well?
Yeah, so the warmer it is, the faster that they can reproduce. So one issue in Canada is that as we see the warmer temperatures showing up and warmer water, specifically stagnant water, We see faster egg to adult generation time, so we can have more mosquitoes adapting to newer landscapes throughout our summer season. As well, we can see them coming out sooner, so mosquitoes overwinter as female adults. And as soon as it gets warm, they will show up, as I'm sure every Canadian that likes to be outside knows, and they will come out and they will lay their eggs. And so the sooner they're able to do that, again, the more generations they're able to have. And we are seeing the spread of certain species further north as we do see climate change happening.
Rosalind, appreciate you making time to talk about mosquitoes and why they might not be as annoying as it feels. We'll talk to you again soon. Take good care.
Thanks. Bye.
Rosalind Murray is an assistant professor of biology at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. We're at 4 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app as well on your CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Thanks very much for joining us and welcoming us into your morning routine. Good morning as well to Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. What are you following?
Well, this is the morning when we're going to find out the fate for Jeremy Skibitsky. A judge is going to reveal whether he'll go to prison or a psychiatric hospital. The Winnipeg man has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but his lawyer argues he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. A grocer who is closing his St. Vital store after 20 years says one of the hardest things was telling his staff. Dakota Family Foods in St. Vital is about to close its stores. Scott Clement says a number of factors weighed into that decision, including not being able to come to a lease agreement with the building owner and 9 months of construction that prevented customer access and put a dent in his business. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. It is going to be a very hot day today for much of the province. There are weather warnings, heat warnings in effect for northern and southern Manitoba. There are also special weather statements in effect because of that smoke in the north. So be aware of that. We're expecting a temperature high of 32 for Winnipeg today, but with a humidex, it might feel like 37, even up to 40. For Brandon today, sunny, then a mix of sun and cloud. It's going to be another hot day. 33 degrees is the expected high. With a humidex, it'll feel like 40. Similar up in Dauphin, high of 33 with a humidex, 40. In Thompson, a risk of a severe thunderstorm today with some local smoke. Temperature high of 27, but it'll feel like 35 as well. In Churchill today, becoming a mix of sun and cloud. And not so hot with a high of 17 degrees. It's going to be that day where you should consider drinking plenty of water because you don't want to wait until you're thirsty. What happens when you're thirsty? It's too late. So be aware of that. And consider staying out of this direct sun as well. Find some shade. And don't forget that there are public buildings around, so you can use them as shelters. Splash pads are also up and misting stations around throughout many parts of the city. We'll keep you up to date on what to do with the heat and your forecast still to come here on the program. We'll also hear from Winnipeggers who are thriving in this hot temperature. These hot conditions. Stay tuned for that coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. World Report is standing by.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Wanda Coop is one of Canada's most accomplished and influential contemporary painters. Wanda says she draws inspiration from the world she observes around her. She'll be here to talk about her latest exhibition and how she says she paints things before she sees them.
We're in the visual world and we feel things. We feel things deeply.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Mark Kelly. Dating apps have been a big way for couples to meet for years now, but a growing number of singles are leaving them behind, saying they're burnt out and putting their faith in real-life meetups instead. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Many Indigenous leaders say they are frustrated with the Trudeau government, and today, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will lean into that. He's appearing at the Assembly of First Nations this hour in person for the first time, and as Olivia Stefanovich reports, some of the chiefs might be feeling like it's time for a change in government.
Quit being on your phone or talking and listen to us. That's what you're here for.
Assembly of First Nations leaders aren't shy about voicing their frustrations with the Trudeau government.
You're ignoring my emails and my letters. And if Trudeau, if you have balls enough, come to my territory.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Andanda-Sangari got an earful yesterday.
Look, when there's an election, I think it'll be a clear decision for Canadians to make, including First Nations.
Forcing him to defend his government's work on reconciliation.
And I'll be proud to put up our record against Pierre Poilievre's any single day.
I've listened to First Nations.
Pierre Poilievre will try to capitalize on that frustration this morning when he makes his first in-person appearance before the AFN as Conservative leader.
I hope to hear that he fully accepts and wants to work with First Nations.
Sartlip Band Chief Don Tom says he'll be listening to Poilievre's every word.
Our experience in the past hasn't been so great working with Conservative government, so we're a little bit worried.
Tom says Poilievre must prove he's willing to listen and take the issues of each First Nation seriously if he wants to become the next Prime Minister. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Montreal.
A judge will reveal this morning if Jeremy Skibitsky will go to prison or a psychiatric hospital. The Winnipeg man has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but his lawyer argued he's not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Now the judge must decide whether he was experiencing a psychotic episode or driven by a perverse sexual interest. Karen Pauls has more and a warning. Some of the details in this story are disturbing.
In a police interview, Jeremy Skibitsky confessed to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman who's been given the name Buffalo Woman.
I killed 4 people. Okay.
During the trial, defense witnesses testified Skibitsky was suffering from schizophrenia at the time of the killings. Anna Seghetti is a Toronto lawyer who represents people who have been found not criminally responsible.
It would be unfair to incarcerate someone who was ill at the time of their offending, regardless of how brutal or how violent their act was. What they need is treatment and assistance to reduce their risk.
Crown experts testified Skibitsky is a homicidal necrophiliac, a rare condition where people are aroused by having sex with someone they've killed. Brandon Trask is a former Crown prosecutor who now teaches law at the University of Manitoba.
Typically, if we see cases where the defense is making this sort of an argument, it's usually in relation to sort of a single incident or multiple incidents, but over a short period of time. Here, obviously, you've got multiple victims, and those offenses spread out over a relatively elongated period of time. That's very unusual.
The garbage dump is not a burial site for our women and girls.
The killing sparked demands to search a landfill for the remains of 2 of the victims. That search is now set to begin in the fall. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
British police are expected to give an update this morning on a triple killing. 3 women were found dead in their suburban London home on Tuesday. Police say they were all killed with a crossbow. The victims are the wife and 2 daughters of BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt. The suspect was found injured in a cemetery yesterday. The UK government says it is considering tightening the laws on owning crossbows. We're watching the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington for an important announcement from Canada. It appears the federal government is ready to commit to spending 2% of its GDP on defense. Here's what Defense Minister Bill Blair told a NATO panel yesterday.
I'm hoping over the next few days that we'll be able to articulate for our colleagues a credible and verifiable path for Canada and the investments we have to make.
A senior Canadian official told CBC News the federal government could unveil a timeline to hit NATO's spending target today, likely at the very end of the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there yesterday.
We're going to continue to be there step by step, not just supporting you directly, but making sure everyone across the NATO alliance remains as steadfast as we are in support for you and for Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Canada pledged another $500 million in military assistance to Ukraine, and the two leaders also discussed the expansion of training missions for Ukrainian pilots. An evacuation order has been issued for a community in central British Columbia. Residents in the northeast region of Wells are ordered to leave immediately. The Cornish Mountain wildfire was discovered yesterday. Officials say it is a threat to safety. The fire is currently burning 70 hectares of land. It's been nearly a year since a wildfire forced residents of Yellowknife out of their homes. The city is still working on finalizing its emergency plans for this season. But for organizations that support Yellowknife's vulnerable population, that plan can't come soon enough. Natalie Pressman reports.
Better communications could have helped the city of Yellowknife during last summer's wildfire evacuation. It's one of the observations in a new report out this week that makes 26 recommendations on coordination, communication, and supporting residents. Rebecca Alty is Yellowknife's mayor. She says they've been implementing some of them, like engaging the public and training for staff. But she says updating the city's emergency plans won't be finished until later this summer.
Unfortunately, do I wish it could have been done in November? For sure, but we want to make sure that they're done well, they're done right.
The Yellowknife Salvation Army has already booked accommodations for its clients in case the city has to evacuate. Tony Burchett is the executive director. He says his organization can't wait for the city's updates.
Otherwise, it'll be last year all over again.
He says planning is especially important for vulnerable population.
When we look at them and say, you have to be out of here by tomorrow, the mental health issues kick in.
Tammy Roberts is the executive director of Home Base. That's supported living for youth in Yellowknife. She says Home Base has its own emergency plans too.
You can't just spring something on somebody who has a disability.
Roberts and Burchett say they have seen improvements from the city, but that they have to take care of their own. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
China is cementing its position as a leader in renewable energy development. That is the conclusion of the latest report of the Global Energy Monitor. The NGO says when it comes to wind and solar energy, China is not only a world leader, it also has twice as much capacity with projects under construction than the rest of the world combined. Brazil, Australia, and the United States are also top producers of renewable energy. Canada, not in the top 10. In PEI farm country, scanning potato plants for viruses is tedious work, and it's getting harder to find people who want to do the job. As Nancy Russell tells us, AI technology may have the answer in a robot.
It looks like a dune buggy mounted on big tires with long black wings, but the AgriScout robot has an important job in the potato field, using AI to identify diseases. It's funded by the PEI Potato Board, which came to the University of Prince Edward Island searching for a more high-tech way of looking for potato virus Y. Ryan Barrett is with the Potato Board.
Detecting PVY, it's one of the few things we do in potatoes that's very manual. It involves walking up and down fields, trying to look for disease plants.
The robot has a camera mounted over every row, and it's doing 5 rows at a time, taking photos of the plants.
The artificial intelligence is processing those images and hopefully being able to pick out plants that it thinks are infected.
They are taking the robot across PEI this summer to give the AI program more images to analyze and learn from. Potato researchers check the plants that have been identified by the robot to see how well it is doing at finding the potato virus. Master's student Charanpreet Singh helped to develop the robot.
Yeah, it's really hard for even the human to tell the difference between the healthy and infected plants, right? So to train the AI models to detect those symptoms are really challenging.
UPEI researchers hope to have farmers using the robots next summer, with the goal of having the AgriScout robot ready to sell commercially in 3 to 5 years. Nancy Russell, CBC News, North Wilshire, PEI.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Well, this week has been hot. Pretty big contrast from the rain and cooler temperatures Manitobans experienced earlier this summer. So how are Winnipeggers thriving in it? We'll hear more from Jim Agapito. First, though, the decision in the trial of admitted Winnipeg serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky is expected to be handed down by a judge today. We're going to hear more about how that could play out. That's coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app and on your CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. 11 minutes after 8 o'clock, and Heather Wells joining us from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a grocer who is closing his St. Vital store after 20 years says one of the hardest things has been telling his staff. Dakota Family Foods in St. Vital is about to close its doors. Scott Clement says a number of factors weighed into that decision to shut it down, including not being able to come up to a lease agreement with the building owner. And returning some unclaimed family history to Winnipeggers, an employee at Empire Drugs found a box in the basement of that North End pharmacy. Inside, old-fashioned film photos developed 60 years ago but never claimed. We'll hear what he's been doing with them in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Ediemi is back for an update on the very hot weather. Hello.
Hello. We've gone up +1 again, 22 in the city. We're expecting sunny skies throughout the day with some haze. It will become breezy this morning, and then we will get to that high of 32. The average high for this time of the year is around 26. However, due to that humidex, it's going to be reaching the range of the 40s. And tonight we will clear up, and then it's going to give way to partly cloudy conditions overnight with a slim chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm, with that wind becoming light late into the evening. And also, I need to advise you there's a heat warning in effect for the entire province. In the north, the warning is in effect due to the exceptional high temperatures, as daytime highs will reach around 30 and then gradually cooling later. And for the southern part of the province, the humidex value is expected to reach 40 today and Friday, with daytime temperatures exceeding 32. Though, good news is relief is expected by late Fridays, but temperatures will remain above a normal into next week. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 22 and we are warming up to 32.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Sabi Adiemi talking about the weather there. Essentially today, drink lots of water, try to stay out of the direct sunlight, try the shade if you are going to be outside. And of course, we have public buildings that you can use as shelters. And those splash pads, misting stations, they are all around the city. So you might want to make use of that. We're going to make use of Corey Funk.
Kind of. It's been such a quiet commute so far this morning. No one's really made use of the CBC commuter line yet, which is A-okay with me. Probably means a lot of folks are taking it easy, which is great, especially at this time of year, especially on a hot day like this. If you do see something going on out there, if you're walking, biking, or driving, or busing, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
14 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. Today we're going to learn the fate of Jeremy Skibitsky, admitted to killing 4 indigenous women, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and an unidentified woman given the name Mashkude Bishike Ikwe Iban. He has pleaded not guilty. The CBC's Caitlin Gawrylak has been covering this unusual trial and joins us to walk us through what could happen later this morning. A warning that some of the details are distressing. Good morning, Caitlin.
Good morning.
Remind us what makes this case unique.
So we heard during the trial that Skibitsky actually admitted to causing all 4 deaths. So it wasn't a matter of lawyers sort of having to prove whether or not he did it. But the trial did come down to one question, and that was, what was Skibitsky's motivation for killing these 4 women in 2022? Now, his lawyers argued that he was driven by psychotic symptoms and delusions linked to schizophrenia at the time of the killings, and that he should be found not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. Meanwhile, prosecutors argued he knew exactly what he was doing and that it was wrong.
And so what happens if he is found not criminally responsible?
So just sort of as a refresher, not criminally responsible is essentially a special kind of verdict in the criminal justice system. So it's not an acquittal, it's not a conviction, it's something different, and it's designed for people who commit crimes but are so mentally ill that they can't understand either what they did or that it was wrong. It's also extremely rare as a verdict. Anita Szigeti, who's a longtime Toronto mental health litigator we spoke to, says at most only about 1% of criminal prosecutions end in that verdict. And in cases where that does happen, most people are then detained in a secure psychiatric facility, and typically the more serious the crime, the higher level of security they get. But exactly what happens is determined by a group of experts who are known as the Criminal Code Review Board. Usually people who go through that system are confined to the ward they're put in, but if their risk to the public is diminished through treatment, they can slowly have those restrictions sort of loosened over time. And their situation also will get reviewed every year by that same review board. And some people will eventually get day passes to go out into the community or move into supervised housing. And if the board finds a person no longer poses a significant risk to public safety, then they get an absolute discharge from the system, meaning they're free. But Szigeti says even in cases where that does happen, it generally takes at least 10 years to get there. And she says this idea that the not criminally responsible system is some kind of get out of jail free card is far from the truth.
Nobody's getting away with anything. This is a rigorous, secure system that puts a lot of obligations on the accused for a long time, and it's a difficult road for them. The public should have confidence that the system, generally speaking, works as intended.
Now, in Skibitsky's case, she says the details of the offenses might make it sort of an uphill battle for him to be found not criminally responsible, and that is in part because of details that include he admitted to killing the 4 women and that it happened over a 2-month period, and that we know he disposed of their remains in garbage bins so they wouldn't be found.
If there is an NCR verdict in this case, I think it'll be a very interesting one, a very unique one, a very atypical one. I would certainly be looking at the judge's reasons and judgment to see how those dots are connected in this case, if that's the case.
His trial also heard that when he was arrested, Skibitsky told police that the killings were racially motivated, and he said he performed sex acts on the women's bodies after killing them. His lawyers argued he did that because he believed he was on a mission from God, and he didn't know what he was doing was morally wrong.
So that's not criminally responsible. What happens if Skibitsky is found criminally responsible?
Yeah, so the prosecutors in this case argued that Skibitsky preyed on vulnerable women at homeless shelters in Winnipeg before committing 4 planned and deliberate murders. And they did present a lot of evidence to sort of support that. There was the video confession to police, surveillance videos, there was DNA evidence, online searches done on his computer, messages he sent online, letters he sent to another inmate while he was in jail. But a big part of the prosecution's argument came down to the opinion of the forensic psychiatrist who they got to assess Skibitsky. And that opinion was that the killings were driven by what's known as homicidal necrophilia, or an arousal to having sex with people the accused has killed. So if the judge agrees with that on all 4 counts and convicts him of first-degree murder, that has an automatic life sentence in prison without any chance of parole for 25 years. And it's the same sentence for if he's convicted on just 1 count or multiple. And that's according to Brandon Trask, who's an assistant professor of law at the University of Manitoba.
Are there other ways this decision could go depending on what the judge says?
Yeah, there are a few other things that are possible, according to Trask, that law professor, but they're less likely, he thinks. So that could include things like Skibitsky being found guilty of a lesser included offense, it's called, so something like second-degree murder instead of first-degree. He could also be found guilty of murdering just some of the women, but found not criminally responsible for other counts. There also was a woman here who was still unidentified. We know no remains have ever been found. We don't know who she was. And that on its own, Trask said, could have been hard to prove, but he says with the evidence presented at trial, including that confession video, the fact that there were multiple victims over a 2-month period, he says he thinks it's most likely that Skibitsky will either be convicted or found not criminally responsible on all 4 counts.
Caitlin, the trial was initially supposed to be a jury trial, but it changed right before it started. Does that have any effect here, do you think?
Yeah, so one thing that's actually different between a jury's verdict and a judge's decision is that the judge has to give reasons why they make their decision. A jury doesn't. So that means instead of with a jury, us having to speculate about why the verdict went the way it did, wondering, did the jury follow the instructions? Was everything done properly? In this case, we'll actually get a picture of exactly what was going through the judge's mind when he made his decision. And in a case like this that had so much attention and really galvanized people around searching a landfill for the remains of 2 women, and it also, as we know, became a major issue in Manitoba's provincial election last fall, law professor Trask says the fact that we're getting those specific reasons could help the public better understand what happens.
Seeing that we're going to get a dispassioned set of reasons from Chief Justice Joyal because we're getting a written decision from a judge alone, I think that will actually be very helpful in moving forward as a community, frankly.
Trask also says Skibitsky's lawyers or the Crown could also appeal the decision depending how it goes if they feel they see a pathway for that somewhere in the judge's ruling.
Thanks for your work on this and for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That's Caitlin Gowrluck, reporter with CBC Manitoba. You can read more on this story online as well, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I would recommend Indigenous pathways to other Indigenous storytellers because we can amplify each other's voices.
Indigenous storytellers, CBC wants to elevate your voice.
We need more Indigenous people telling Indigenous stories, and this program gives people that opportunity to do so.
A 9-month paid development opportunity. Visit cbc.ca/pathways to apply in Winnipeg today.
Coming up to 22 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. Many Manitobans were waiting for it, others hoping for it, and now it is right here in our face. It's going to be hot today. Environment Canada predicting very hot conditions, which is a pretty big contrast to the wet and cooler temperatures at the beginning of the summer. So how are Winnipeggers enjoying the heat? We sent the CBC's Jim Agapito to Assiniboine Park to see.
My name is Rick Wind.
Okay, Rick, I got to ask, how are you enjoying the heat right now?
It's been a long, cold winter, and the heat almost makes you forget there was a winter. Almost.
Almost?
A little too much rain, but other than that, it's been very nice. I'm riding my bike, as you can see. I'm walking. I'm cutting a lot of grass. I'm walking the dog. Various things. Playing a little tennis, maybe.
How's that going?
Let's just say we're playing a little tennis.
Fiona Tatro. Well, I had an exercise class at the park today with my kids, so we're enjoying the park by exercising.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a company called Fit Together Winnipeg, I think, and it's for pregnant women and moms with new babies. You can even bring your toddlers if you want to.
And you brought your kids here. How is everyone doing in the heat?
We stay in the shade. I brought lots of water and surprise freezies in the cooler.
How are your children doing in here? Are they loving the warmth?
Yeah, it's good when you're outside in the breeze. If it was stifling hot, I think it'd be a lot worse. We don't have AC at home, so going outside and being in nature is the best thing to do.
Hi, I'm Brian Taves. We're loving it. We've been on about an hour and a half, 2-hour bike ride. Started at in Fort Garry. We've been up to Sturgeon Creek Parkway, all the way up to Saskatchewan Avenue, and we're making our way back. So, if you've got lots of water and you're hydrated, it's great.
Then you just mentioned that, so you're staying cool on the bike. How do you do that?
Drive faster. No, you know what? The wind resistance, the wind is, it's keeping us cool. Yeah, we're good.
Katie Selch. I like it. I'm taking my dog for a walk. I'm going to work later, so it's a nice change from the rain.
You do love the heat, so what will you be doing to enjoy this nice weather finally?
Going for a lot of walks, probably going to the beach later this week, that kind of stuff.
It's going to be extremely hot. What are you doing to keep cool?
Well, I do. I hydrate. I stay in the shade as much as I can. I do my exercise in the morning, except for today I'm a little late. But other than that, just take it easy in the heat.
We go on sprinkler. We have umbrellas. We find trees, and I think just parks like this.
Well, hydration is first and foremost, and know the signs if you're not going to be hydrated, if you're not going to sweat anymore. I'm an ex-nurse, so I should know the signs of dehydration. Take a break once in a while, stay in the shade like we are doing right now.
I make sure I bring a lot of water for my dog. I use the water fountains for myself. Red Bull, kind of stuff.
Wear sunscreen, wear a hat, and don't overdo it in the sun.
Sunscreen if you're going to be out in the sun quite a bit. Definitely hats, all that kind of stuff. Dress well. Yeah.
Now, if the weather keeps up like this, where we don't have rain, we have the nice heat, what are some of the things you're going to do this summer to enjoy it?
We're going to keep biking, right, Mel? Yeah, keep biking. Just keep getting out there.
Do you have any messages for Winnipeggers or Manitobans or whoever's listening and how to enjoy, the summer heat?
Don't exert yourself and just be like, I'm going to be freezing in 3 months, so I'll sweat for today.
The weather isn't like this all year round, so while we have it, we should take advantage of it.
The CBC's Jim Agapito speaking with Winnipeggers at Assiniboine Park on how they're embracing the heat. You'll want to remember to wear lots of sunscreen today, stay hydrated, and consider finding shade as well. We're at 26 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Here's Robin Black and Lou Pomonti. This is Walking on the Moon.
Baby, you're the force of gravity. Yeah, you got me hooked. I feel your fire take control of me. Like an earthquake, you got me shook. I'm captivated by your energy. Boy, you got me hypnotized. So let's take this to another galaxy. Boy, you make me want to fly. Got me walking on the moon. Let's go walking on the moon. Oh yeah, walking on the moon. It's so magnetic, got me hooked on you. Hooked on you. Laws of attraction, yeah, I'm stuck like glue. Caught in your orbit, no, I can't escape. So let's take this party into outer space. Yeah. Let's go walking on the moon. Let's go walking on the moon. Me and you, let's go walking on the moon. Let's go walking on the moon. Close your eyes. Fantasize. Let's take it to the skies. Light up the night. It's so magnetic, got me hooked on you. Hooked on you. Laws of attraction, yeah, I'm stuck like glue. Caught in your orbit, no, I can't escape. So let's take this party into outer space. Let's go walking on the moon. Let's go walking on the moon. Let's go
That's Robin Black and Lou Pomonti with Walking on the Moon. Someone who's just walked in studio, Janet Stewart, host of Radio Noon. Good morning.
Good morning, Faith.
It's a hot day.
It is a hot day, but so far so good. It's lovely out there right now. My advice would be if you want outdoor time, do it now.
Right.
Keep the bumper and let the hot afternoon, that's nap time.
The earlier, the better, if you can.
That's what I think.
What do you work on today on Radio Noon?
Today we have a calling conversation about keeping kids safe. And this is in the wake of those RCMP charges announced against 7 people in Portage La Prairie. It's got a lot of people wondering about keeping their kids safe. A lot of this luring and predator grooming of potential victims happens online. And it's the summer. Kids want to play their games, right? They want to be online. So how do you make sure that they aren't being targeted? We've got Janet Campbell from the Joy Smith Foundation coming in to be our special guest. And she's going to give us tips and talk to us. Any advice, any questions you have, any concerns you have, you can call in right now, 204-788-3797. We'll get you answers today on Radio Noon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So Janet Stewart, host of Radio Noon. I'm Faith Fundal here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Lots to come after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's sunny. It's already 22 out there. Heat warnings covering most of Manitoba today. In Winnipeg, sunny, hazy, windy, and a high of 32, the Humidex 37. The decision in the trial of admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky will be delivered in a Winnipeg court this morning. Skibitsky confessed to killing 4 Indigenous women in 2022, but argued he should be found not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Lawyer Anita Szigeti says that is an uphill battle to prove the NCR, in part because the killings happened over a 2-month period.
If there is an NCR verdict in this case, I think it'll be a very interesting one, a very unique one, a very atypical one. I would certainly be looking at the judge's reasons and judgment to see how those dots are connected.
Skibitsky pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, and Morgan Harris, as well as an unidentified woman given the name Buffalo Woman, Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, is addressing the Assembly of First Nations in Montreal right now. It is his first in-person address to the Assembly. He is outlining what he would do for First Nations if he becomes Prime Minister, including addressing crime.
We need to cut off the flow of illicit drugs and gang activities that threaten communities. We also need to stop Justin Trudeau's wacko policies of legalizing drugs and leaving addicts at the mercy of predatory drug dealers.
That just moments ago. Poilievre also pledging to address policing, housing, and economic growth in First Nations communities. Well, are you feeling the heat? If it gets too much for you in Winnipeg, people can cool down at city-run leisure centers, libraries, pools, spray pads, and some community centers. The City of Winnipeg's also set up 8 hydration stations in the core, North End, and West End. Meanwhile, there are groups like Community 204 handing out water to people who are homeless. That group's Alexis Tashnak says if people see someone who is unhoused or vulnerable, they should ask if they're okay.
A lot of people just seem to think, you just keep walking by, they're just wanting money. But, sometimes it's just that simple hello to see how they're doing in their mental health and just asking them the questions like, hey, have you had any water today? No, you haven't? Hey, I've got some water in the back of my car. I'll be right back and I'll bring you some.
Tashnak says members of her group are looking out for signs of heat-related illness as they try to help people in need stay hydrated. This high heat and humidity is going to be with us over the next couple of days. After decades in St. Vital, Dakota Family Foods is closing its doors. Owner Scott Clement has operated the grocery store for 20 years. Clement says a number of reasons factored into his decision to close. Among them, 9 months of construction 2 years ago, curbing customer access to his store.
There was times where, you couldn't even get into the store. It was tough for customers. So, and customers were staying away. You talked to a lot of seniors and they were staying away because, you had a lot of construction working right in front at the access point, the entrance points, and it was a challenge for them.
Clement says his lease is also up and he wasn't able to come to an agreement with the building owner. He says the hardest part was telling his staff. Clement says the final day for Dakota Family Foods will depend on his employees and on his inventory. A North End pharmacy employee is connecting some Winnipeggers with snapshots of their past.
E. Rudolph, 792 Stella Avenue,
Yes.
June 7, 1967. So inside there's 2 photos.
Okay.
And that is Dwayne Hines handing over photographs he found in the basement of Empire Drugs. Old-fashioned film photos developed 60 years ago and never claimed. Hines used social media to find family members.
We've made some great connections already. Some relatives are coming to claim photos. We've had a story from Selkirk where a woman had a house fire, so she lost everything. And so now this one package of pictures is all she has, so she's coming to pick them up tomorrow.
Hines says he feels like an archaeologist finding lost treasure. There were 30 packages of unclaimed photos, and Hines hopes through the names and addresses he can find all the families. You can find more news. Just head to our website through the day, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Adiemi has a last look at the very hot weather. Good morning.
Heat warning in effect for the entire province. That's what I'll tell you. The humidity value is expected to reach 40 today. And, by Friday, we should be seeing, expecting it to expect that relief by Friday. Though temperatures will exceed 32 today. Currently 22 in Winnipeg. We're seeing a high of 32. Up north, you've got local smoke. Down south, it's all going to be hot, feeling like in the range of 40s. I'll tell you, drink plenty of water, plan outdoor activities for cooler times of the day, and of course, don't leave people or pets in the vehicle.
Some good advice. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi, our tech and music producer. Corey Funk, the Commute.
Yes, Southbound University just past Markham. There's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the curb lane, so keep left to get around that as well. Norwood Bridge, really, really slow. Heard from Robin, who's trying to get onto Broadway. There's construction going on until late September there, so keep left because most of the construction is happening in the right-hand lanes, going both north and south.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, our studio director. Take good care as the heat warnings continue. Thanks very much to the folks who are watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Our streaming producer is Brad Lillies. Have a good morning. Mag-ingat po kayo and take good care wherever you are. Thank you for listening. I'm Faith Fundal. The Current is next.